And hello, everyone. And there is the live stream. YouTube has us. We are good and we are live. And hello, welcome to the IKS YouTube. Today we have a very special game. This game is a game that we're playing with the Women's Wargaming Network. These particular individuals, as I understand, have some basis of expertise. Women, of course, which we think may be a rarity in wargaming, but there's no reason for that. And these particular women are professional practitioners in the wargaming space. And so I'm actually hoping to learn from how they do things and the choices that they make, However, for these women, as I understand, this is their first time playing Kriegsspiel. So they may sound a little nervous or unsure of themselves as they play their first ever Kriegsspiel game. But I also think they'll probably surprise a lot of us as they make their moves and everything unfolds. I know that we have some excellent strategies from both teams, in particular the Habsburgs, which you see on the map in yellow. That's their route of march, and then in the blue. Now, for today's event, I am joined by a co-host, and I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off so we can see more of the map. And I'm going to introduce my co-host, who is named Betsy. And Betsy, you are, I'll let you talk for yourself. Betsy, how are you? And welcome to the International Kriegsspiel Society.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Betsy Joslin. So I'm the head of programming for the Women's Wargaming Network. I also am a professional wargamer. I'm a research associate for the Institute for Defense Analyses. Great opportunity for me to very quickly say that anything that I say or comment on this channel and on the game, I'm not representing IDA in any way, but I do have the opportunity to wargame professionally for them and their team, which is a really, really cool experience and something that I love. So in addition to helping out with WWN where I can, I'm also a Georgetown University Wargaming Society member, and I'm also a Moores Wargaming instructor, and I'm also the co-chair for Connections Next Generation. So wherever I get the chance essentially to jump and do wargaming, it's something that I try to jump into as quickly as I can. I had the really cool opportunity as a kid growing up, going to Historicon World Wargaming Championships with my dad and my brothers. And when I realized that it was something that I could do forever professionally and get paid for it, I was like, shut up and take my money. How do I do that for forever? I feel exceptionally lucky to do what I do. I love what I do. Every day is fun and creative. And this is just such a cool experience that IKS, who actually reached out to us, offered this opportunity to do this game. And I had a lot of women who have recently joined the network and say, listen, I really want to know more about professional wargaming. I'm embarrassed to say that I've never even seen a war game or, been exposed to a war game. And we've got other people in the network who are like, I'm a professional game designer. I either work in the commercial world or I work in the professional wargaming world. So we've got a great mix of women coming together, and essentially the Women's Wargaming Network is all about finding the women who are interested in wargaming in any capacity, creating a network so we can support each other, reach out to each other, and just play war games, get to know more about war games, have fun, be part of the amazing community that is the wargaming family. And that's what we're here to do, and we're really excited about it.
That's so awesome. And yeah, you deserve this opportunity, and it's a treat to have you in this space with us. I'm literally hoping to learn from you. I believe that your community has a lot to offer wargaming in general, and of course the International Kriegsspiel Society. And I hope that the collaboration flourishes, and again, that we learn from what we see here today and in the future. So,
Absolutely.
I have here my little mug here just so people can see. I've got this is available on the IKS store. It's the potential mug, and it says on the back side, not everyone gets to war game for a living when they grow up. So I'm just saying, that's what a professional war game practitioner needs right there.
Absolutely. And I'll note, the demand for more war games has increased, and the demand for more war gamers has absolutely increased. So if you're someone who wants to get into the field professionally, there's opportunity to do so. And I highly encourage people to chase those dreams because they're awesome and they're worth obtaining.
Oh, yeah. And it's actually important. if you play war games or if you join the military, you learn anything about war, you actually learn it's quite awful and it should be avoided. But there are cases where war cannot be avoided, and in those cases, you want the war to be ended as quickly as possible with as few casualties and costs as possible. And the way to do that is to study the science, if you will. It's probably considered an art, but you study the science or art or whatever of war, and wargaming gives us an opportunity to do this. And the idea is to put the enemy in a position where they're forced to come to the negotiating table, and you can, resolve the conflict that way. So wargaming is an extremely important profession, believe it or not, in my opinion. And I really think that if you have any kind of an interest in a more peaceful world, you're not warmongers. You can't be a warmonger. You can't work in this kind of field or learn about or study in this field and be pro-war, That's my opinion on that. What do you think, Betsy?
No, I absolutely agree. And I wish I could remember the name of this dissertation that I read. I want to say it was a few months ago, actually. But someone was kind of taking a feminist perspective of Kriegsspiel and war in general, and overlaying some of those perspectives on top of a traditional game that has been played to study war. But there's different elements of war that can still be brought out by these games, and are there important indicators that are important considerations, which is such a cool perspective. I never thought about that before. But you're marching through a town. To what degree are civilians being impacted by the decisions you're making in these areas? Or even if you want to back it up and think from a logistics perspective, which is absolutely something in the professional wargaming world that I think is being examined a lot right now. Kriegsspiel is something that can still be used to dig a little deeper on these topics of non-traditional byproducts of a very traditional game, right? So I completely agree with everything that you said, but I also agree that there's a lot of benefit to learning where this came from, where it's going. And I've had a few chances to play Kriegsspiel myself, and I love that you can get creative in it. You said yourself, we were talking before, the players don't know the rules. And so as a player, you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You get really creative with what you want to do, because it's like, hey, there's no rules until there are. But I think that's a really beneficial thing for players to be exposed to, whether you are in the military or if you work in national security and you're looking to build policies to prevent this kind of stuff from happening.
Yeah. What was I going to say about that? I forgot what I was going to say. I spaced it, unfortunately. Oh my gosh, it was a good point. That happens.
Was it about the players don't know the rules?
I think so. I can't remember. It will come back. I'm not going to worry about it
just
right now.
Yell it out in the middle of the game. Right?
But yeah, absolutely. So I think what we need to do now is we need to get down from the 30,000 foot level now and get down into the game, talk to the players, the commanders. What's their strategy? What are they doing today? By the way, I also would like to read that dissertation. So if you can find that or that author.
Absolutely.
And
yeah, I'm going to have to do that and send it out to the team, because it came back to me this week when I was just even preparing for today, and I was like, oh man, what was that cool thing that I read that one time? I think I cited it somewhere else in a study I was working on, so I'll definitely look up into that and see if I can move that along.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Let's get into our players here. So I'm going to pull up my Discord and put it over here on the right side so I can see everything. Is that even working? There we are. Obviously, we're not professionals here, folks, but we pretend to be. All right, so what we see here is we have the French versus the Austrians, and you have a situation where the Austrians are crossing this river, and they're attempting to secure this town and cut a French supply line, whereas the French, of course, don't want their supply line cut. And you have two French columns that are approaching from the west. and you have a cavalry command which is out of contact with these other columns coming up from the south. And because the cavalry command does not have contact with the main French force, they're not really coordinated. However, they will, of course, establish contact, I'm sure. You can take a look here. I'm zooming in on the map. You see that the French have their scouts out. You see that the Austrians also have scouts out, and that there's contact between these units here. So these folks obviously see each other along the way. I actually don't know about this one because there's a ridge here. But these folks certainly will observe each other at a distance. So the Austrians are aware that the French are coming, that they are probably going to approach from the west. And what do the Austrians decide to do? Ultimately, I'd like to drop down and talk to the side commanders and hear from them what their plan is and see how they're reading the situation. So let's go ahead and do that, Betsy. Let's drop down to the Habsburg channel. And
Okay.
Who's in command there? Do you know who's in command there?
It's actually Say. I believe Say is in command.
Okay, and she's in a different channel. So let's pop down there. Now, just so everyone knows, if an umpire pops in, we will immediately stop what we're saying because the umpire is paramount. They have to give reports to the players and get their orders. So in the interest of time, we just stop. They're allowed to interrupt. It's not rude. It's just we got to move. But then after the umpire is done, we can resume our conversation with the player. We also want the players to have time and opportunity to think and consider their decisions. So right now, an umpire is down there. So we'll pop in, but we'll wait for the umpire to finish up before we start talking to the players. So I don't know. Can you see Habsburg planning down below, Betsy?
I can.
Okay, that's where we're going to go. All right, let's go. Good luck.
Thanks.
All right.
See? So everybody should go to that channel for now so that we can start giving you reports.
Oh, okay.
Hey, if you want to pass the plan to the umpires, I'm gonna cut over to my Spiegel channel here.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Sounds good. And then for the umpires, well, I can paste it in the Davovich channel if that's better, because we wanted to make sure that we conveyed our overall strategy to you in a written way, if we needed to.
Okay.
So I don't know what is the right way to do that.
Normally we might take the plan beforehand, but right now we have already started moving the game, so we mostly will work with verbal reports and orders.
Okay. So I guess what you want us to go to our separate channels is what I think I'm hearing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, bye.
Oops. Sorry. I'm trying to double click on mine.
There we are. Okay. Hello, Say. I'm Marshall. I'm your commentator today. I see you on the Discord. Hello. I can't put my camera on the Discord myself because OBS is using it. So it's just a technical thing, but I wish I could say hi. You do see a little picture of me wearing my Burger King
I
crown.
do. I like that. It's very fun.
There you are. I'm here with Betsy, and Say, you are commanding the Habsburg force, is that right?
Yes.
All right. I have to say, I did see some of your planning in advance of the game, and I was pretty impressed. You already are outclassing the average IKS player, and you paid attention to a number of factors that a lot of people ignore. Things like weather, it's a hot day, do the troops have water, and stuff like that. Typically, we don't model those things because our players don't think about them. And I love the fact in your planning that you thought about that. So I just want to give you props there because I think it's very well deserved. You really did put some planning and thought into this, and it's greatly appreciated. Let's talk about what you're doing here overall. What is the situation as you understand it? What is the Habsburg plan? And what do you think the French are trying to do, please?
Well, I'm going to put into our internal chat here a picture. It's not great, but it was quickly done, and it might help with the discussion. So, what our general plan is, which I think is your first question, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get lost in the sauce. Okay. So our general plan is to move our main force down the road from our starting position. We've decided we are all butchers of the Italian language, so we've renamed these places. So you'll see in the top right corner we have V Bridge.
What channel did you put the image?
Just the if you go to the chat at the very top of our channel here.
Okay.
So if you roll, it should be in this.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Oh gosh, what's the name of the channel? French Planning, or no, not Habsburg.
Davidovich. It's where we're chatting right now. So if you roll over your screen, the bubbles will all come up, and if you go into the very top right corner, you should see a little chat. You know what I'll do? I'll just share my screen.
Okay, let's do that. All right. Yeah, I don't know why I don't see it. That's weird. But here we are. Okay, you have the screen.
Okay, so you can see my screen. Okay, hold on.
Hang on.
The mouse. There it is.
Let me click this. Watch your stream. All right. There it is. Okay, we see everything that you see now. Go ahead.
Okay, so here is the map. We can't pronounce the names, so our units are starting here in V Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing is we want to scout aggressively because we don't know where the French are, and they're very deceptive. It's tricky French.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cav units are being divided up and told to independently find crossings across the river. There's probably a lot of fords. They can also use bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the 2nd Brigade, Matt, is crossing down here at P Bridge, probably a wet crossing using pontoons. They are trying to be deceptive. So they are also trying to get the French's attention to make them think that we're trying to be clever and tricky so that the French will commit down south.
Mm-hmm.
Our main unit, however, will actually just be doing the basic vanilla thing where we cross where we actually are already and go down the road. Mm-hmm. The main unit includes all of the 1st Brigade, most of the artillery, except for the a small mobile unit of the 3-pounders that are supporting down at Pozzolo.
Mm-hmm.
And one cav unit is assigned to both of these infantry units. So it's only 6 of the 8 cav units that are scouting. 1 light cav is assigned to each of the infantry forces, and they're doing screening of those positions. The overall goal is to march towards Volta, V-Town,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we called. Ideally, both of the units will cross successfully, and they'll converge there. We think that there's a good chance the French may be trying to take Volta because it's a pretty nice location,
Mm-hmm.
and so we're already expecting some resistance there. Regardless, we're going to take it, and then we're going to leave a small unit there, march towards G-Town, our objective, with the full force, and ideally take that. Once we take those towns, then our goal will be to take other key points along the road, secure them, actively look for French couriers, and ideally take M-Town ultimately as another secured position.
Okay.
The blue boxes you see on the map are meant to be named areas of interest, and so we've assigned the cav to go to each of those different units for scouting. And we have this written if you want it, but it sounds like verbal is fine.
Yeah, we're live streaming, so.
Okay.
So the question now is why are you going to? Well, first of all, you said that V-Town is a pretty nice place. Why do you feel that?
Marshall, can we maybe quickly get a report in between?
Yes, go.
So basically you have the screenshot in your text channel where you can see where you are, and you have passed through the city of Valeggio. You're on your way to Volta. The other troops of the 1st Brigade, I think it is, are still in front of you. And so far, that's basically it. Not much has happened. So how we normally do this is I will give you this report of your situation. You can ask any questions that you want, and then I will give you some time to think while I give reports to other players or something like that, and then I will come back for any orders you might have for your troops. If you want to write a dispatch to your commander, you can just type it into your text chat, and then I or someone else will pick it up and forward it to them.
Okay, well, this is my first time playing a Kriegsspiel, so I have a couple administrative questions for you. And
Sure.
maybe, okay. So I do see the image in my channel. And so the next steps would be for me to send a dispatch to all of the unit commanders, which are, I think, the other players on my team, to explain what I see from like a recon perspective.
If you
Right. Because when you say commander, I don't know if you mean that I'm sending a dispatch to an NPC or if I'm sending it to like Una.
No, to a player, yeah, to your. So the thing here is that we're assuming that the Austrians, the Habsburgs, are kind of very strict in their command
Hierarchy,
structure,
yeah.
in the hierarchy. So they will only send reports to up the chain of command, so to speak, and not vertically, horizontally. I mean. But normally, yeah, that's the way it's for communicating with other players. So if you are, if your avatars, if your position on the map would be the same, then you would also be allowed to talk in a voice channel. But otherwise, you communicate by written messages. That also will take some time, of course, to arrive.
Right. No, I got the written messages part. I guess what I'm trying to say is, who am I sending these written messages to? Am I sending them to, when you say commander, who does that mean?
I mean the player who is in overall command of the Habsburg forces. I don't actually know who that is.
Okay, I thought that was me.
That might be
do think
possible.
that's you.
It is.
Yes. Oh,
It
sorry.
is.
Oh, that's fine. No worries. So everybody else will be sending me their orders, and then I can be disseminating out. Well, in this case, it wouldn't be orders because we already have those, but sit rep.
Yeah.
And then
And
I
you can
believe. Go ahead.
You can, of course, also send them updates on what they should do and so on.
Right. Yeah. I just don't need to yet because
Yeah.
we haven't gotten first contact yet, so our plan is
Exactly.
still solid. Okay. Cool. So then. The last question I had is, I believe that Kayla, the commander of 1st Brigade, should be in the same physical space as me, so she and I should be able to talk.
Right now, she's kind of ahead of you because she's at the head
She's
of
further
her.
down the column. That's cool. Yeah,
Exactly.
I got that. That's no worries. Okay, cool. So what I'd like to do then is I'd like to send a dispatch to everybody, just telling them our sit rep. And I can write that in the chat. Is that going to be the easiest for everybody involved here?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I will do that. What's the time frame for me to get that done? Like in the next 3 minutes, 5 minutes?
5 minutes is probably totally fine.
Will do. Copy all. Thank you.
Cool.
Is there anything else that we're doing or not doing administratively that we should be aware of?
Everything
We're all
seems
new,
fine.
so-
Everything seems good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Much appreciated.
See you later.
Bye.
Okay, we're going to let you do what you need to do, and then we'll come
Okay.
back and resume with you shortly, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you,
All right,
guys.
all right.
Thanks, Tay.
Bye.
All right, let's see here. Oh, I don't want to disconnect entirely. Let's, what am I doing? There we are. Okay, well, here's the main map, everyone. We're going to move to another Discord channel so Say can do what she needs to do in peace. Actually, she's moved out. I think it's just you and I here.
Okay. Would you like to go back to the commentator booth? Do we want to hop in on the French?
Yeah, I want to take a look at the French. I don't see an umpire in the French channel. It's called French Planning, so let's go ahead and move there.
Sounds good.
Did you give your orders to to Jean? In this case, Samantha. Samantha, did you give your orders to Jean?
Sophia, since we are together, that this dispatch that we're sending to, yeah, the current orders are for us to continue the march towards Volta. That is
Okay, that's everything I needed. Thank you very much. Anything else?
No, I'm asking Sophia to double check this dispatch that we want to send to Peggy's forces.
That's good. Let's just include the Volta thing.
Okay.
Hey guys, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, we're there. Okay, is the umpire finished? Did he? Yeah, I think he left. Okay,
He has
good.
left.
All right, all right. Who is in command of the French force? And by the way, I'm Marshall. I'm the commentator along with Betsy today. We're talking about this game. We're live streaming, although it's a private stream at the moment. But yes, we are on YouTube. Who's in command?
Yeah, who's in charge here? Don't all jump at once.
Samantha is General Joubert. I am General Masada in addition to Lila.
Nice. Lila, I'm glad you could join. So, Dr. Purple Unicorn, does that mean you're the commander of everyone, or is there a commander of a infantry brigade or cav?
Commander, a regiment. If I'm
A regiment?
correct. I am the brigadier commander. I'm in charge of the 22nd, the 18th, 22nd Demi Brigade, 18th Demi Brigade, and another battalion.
Sophia, how about you?
I'm in charge of I'm the general of the division, in charge of the 25th Regiment, and then our artillery. I actually think we might need to establish a chain of command right now and establish who's on top.
Oh, where is your artillery? Let's see here. Who is in charge of? So who is Messena, 4th Division? Who is that?
That's me and Lila.
Did you organize your column the way you wanted it? Were you allowed to position the units in their order of march?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed you put your artillery and then your supply column at the rear. What was your consideration why did you organize your order of march in this particular way? What was your thought process?
We wanted our column to move as quickly as possible towards Volta. And my artillery is fairly mobile, so once we do encounter enemies and are within strike range, it'll be pretty easy to move them up to the front. In terms of the supply trains, we just wanted to keep that near the rear to protect it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Awesome. What is the, and this is to all of the players, or anyone can answer this, what is the French plan overall, please?
Are you spies? Or?
I'm like, to win.
To win, yeah, glory. No, we're just commentating for, and we're asking both sides similar questions. The purpose is to inform the people who are watching the live stream so they know what's going on and why. And it's just fun to see, whether you're right or wrong,
I will say that in past umpire positions, I'm totally bribable. So it depends how much chocolate you have on you in person.
Oh, there you go.
Might be a little difficult in an online, but it sounds like you said you're headed to Volta. So I would add to Marshall's, what's your overall kind of goal and objective here? Why are you headed in that direction? Why are you headed to that place?
Our goal right now is just to delay the Habsburgs as much as possible. Originally, we didn't think that they'd move to Volta as much, so we were planning on get to Volta and then move towards Valeggio. Now we'll just have to stop them at Volta and prevent them from going where they are trying to get to, which, judging on the direction, is Guidizzolo.
Cool.
All right. Okay, well, good luck to you all. Have you heard from your cavalry command yet?
Hello.
No. Hi, John.
Report to Sophia. It's 6:30, and the forward cavalry elements report that there seems to be more going on around Volta. I assume some enemy cavalry squadrons pushing westwards.
Do we know any more particulars on the direction?
No.
Okay.
To ask, which of the cities are we next to currently?
That is Cavriana.
Specifically south of it.
Right.
Okay.
Which is sort of in the middle of between Castiglione and Volta.
Could I
More-
could I just ask Samantha for the orders? Well, I can assume them, but I would just like need you to confirm them, please. So
Sorry, I am currently trying to figure out the map and find Castiglione.
all right.
It's hard. It's hard to see.
Samantha.
Yeah, because it's in the mountains there. It's in
Okay.
the hills.
Yeah, north of Guidizzolo.
It's in the northwestern portion of the map in the mountains.
Samantha, it seems like we might not be able to get to Volta in time.
Um,
We might want to head southwards and cut into a road that we think they'll head towards or be on, and then we can, I guess, bottleneck them.
okay.
So if we were to head south to get to potentially Tolinello DS Giacomo, then that might be a good place for us to cut them off and have a concentrated battle rather than let them slip their fingers if we are headed straight towards Volta.
No, I see what you're saying now. Yeah. I think that's a good idea. Let's put in those directions. Do that. Do you want me to pull back? Because I believe my elite light are probably slightly behind your cavalry. Your your light skirmishers. You mean pull them back a bit more, or leave them pull them back closer to our regular units? Because I think they're also 5 to 10 minutes ahead of us as well, if I'm remembering the formation correctly. Is that? Did y'all leave already? I think you did.
Oh.
Yeah, well, he'll be back. Yeah,
Oh.
strategize and just be ready when he comes back.
Yeah.
Betsy, let's go back up to the commentator booth.
Sounds good. See you.
If you need the orders, well, one.
All right. So there, you got to see some of the French discussion and planning. We haven't had a full report from either side in terms of what their plans are, but it is very clear to me that the Austrians are very well prepared. We just didn't have time. They didn't have. Our commanders on both sides didn't have time to finish telling us what they were doing. But as you can see, sometimes these turns can move pretty fast. And when the umpires pop in, we got to just zip it and let them go through.
Yeah, this is cool. This is cool to see come to life.
Yeah, it really is. It's a crazy experience because you have that fog of war. And the cool thing is, I'm displaying the Umpire map right now, and I know you can see it because you're here with me on the table.
Right.
And it's interesting to hear the players, you know, there's a little bit of nervousness, which there should be. There's supposed to be, because it's the fog of war. They don't know exactly what the enemy is doing. But one of the things that both sides have done that is absolutely phenomenal, and this is like my number one rule in Kriegsspiel, is scout. Scout, scout, scout. And if you look at and you see these little blocks up here, these little square blocks,
Yeah.
everybody's scouting. Like regular Kriegsspiel players don't do this. They just go blind into the enemy, you know, and oh, look, there they are, let's attack, you know, because like they're playing a game, you know, whereas here the practitioners on both sides have very clearly made smart decisions. They have their eyes open, watching where they're going, which is something that a lot of our Kriegsspiel players who played for a long time never do. It's actually the first thing I tell people to do. Scout, you got to scout. Are you scouting? Scout. But they don't listen to me,
That's really cool to see. I'm not even sure I would have thought of that. So I love that they both have actually done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, your cavalry, that's one of their primary roles. In a minute, I want to talk to the French cavalry commander who knows a thing or two about cavalry professionally. But what do you think overall, Betsy? How do you think they're doing? Do you think they're in for a shock, the French in particular?
I think the French are in for a little bit of a shock. I think one of my favorite things when playing games in general is where can I find opportunities for deception? Where can I create any sort of a fake move where I'm doing this over here and I'm intentionally being both not vocal and kind of vocal about it, just enough so that you think something's going on, so that you can pick up on that signal and you drift towards that direction. And I think the Habsburgs, I love that they have that built into their strategy, and I really want to see that come to life. And if it does, I love everyone and care for them deeply who's on both teams, but I'm very excited to see how the French react to that. I think that will be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's a big part of the fun. Jan is here. Hello, Jan.
Yeah, I think I have a few moments to chat if you want to.
Great. Yeah, Jan, just so everybody knows, is our lead umpire today. He's the person who's actually organized this entire event, developed the scenario, and is doing all of the heavy thinking and lifting today. So, Jan, what's your assessment of the situation? How are the French doing and how are the Austrians doing?
I think the Austrians, with their very aggressive, heavy scouting cavalry force ahead, they did choose the right approach here, and they managed to reach Volta much earlier than the French, of course. Mm-hmm. Which is a problem for the French because they are still split from their cavalry division.
Yeah.
So they are unprotected, and they only have artillery with one of their columns. So the infantry is somewhat in the open there, although I think most of the terrain here are orchards and stuff. But they are a little bit on their own, and it appears that they, instead of choosing to occupy those hills around Cavriana, for example, they keep pushing onwards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and I talked when we reviewed this scenario a couple days ago. You and I looked over the scenario and what we think the French path to victory is and the Austrian path to victory. And my assessment was the French need to scout, determine which column of the Austrians would be vulnerable, and then defeat that column in detail first. And if they could do that, it would be easy then to roll up the rest of the Austrians. The Austrians would ultimately have to retreat or something. But I'm not sure they're doing this. In fact, from being in the French Channel, it looks like they're about to switch to the defensive. Do the Austrians have the responsibility to attack? Is the onus to attack on the Austrians today?
The Austrians are supposed to cut this highway, the Red Road, which is running through Guidizzulo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right, right here.
To prevent the French from sort of interfering with Mantua. Historically they did besiege Mantua, and when the Habsburg columns attacked down from the mountains, from the Alps, they retired and had to lift the siege. And in this scenario, the Habsburg are trying to secure that situation and reestablish lines of communication with Mantua. And the French are now ordered to sort of counter that move, right? They are supposed to drive this Habsburg column back across the Mincio to prevent that from happening. Mm-hmm. Because they want to starve out Mantua, of course.
Yeah, it looks to me, though, like the French are going on the defensive already. I can see them turning their columns south. They're still marching in column. They are concentrating, which is something they're going to need to do. I predict the French will be successful, at least initially here, but we'll see what happens. Betsy, any thoughts on what's unfolding here? You see that the French column has turned south.
Yeah, I am seeing that. It's interesting. You guys were talking about. You mentioned that you had talked about this scenario a few days, and that originally, the French might look at maybe targeting a more vulnerable column of the Austrians. Which column do you think is more vulnerable, and why?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, first of all, I think when I looked at this with Jan, there were three distinct columns. Instead, now we have one big column in the north and one in the south. And I think the instinct is to say the column in the south is the vulnerable one, but I don't think it really is. Yeah, the cavalry could go after it and give it a hard time. But actually, when you look at the big column in the north, if the French were able to concentrate and smash the head of that column, it will take them time to get their reinforcements up. Just because you have a big force, if it's stretched miles and miles behind you, it might as well be a little force. It's not deployed for combat. It's not ready to go. So I think if they concentrate against the head of the column, they could begin scoring victories and, who knows, start a rout, and then the rest of the column just gives up and goes home. That's what I would do. But again, I have this 30,000-foot view that nobody else has. And
It's good to be God.
yeah, right? It's good to be the
wasn't-
king.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the Habsburg cavalry, I think the French could sort of push in on Volta and still smash the head of the Habsburg column because they don't have any artillery to support them or anything. But that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm gonna head back to the Umpire booth.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Don.
you. Yeah, it looks like the Habsburg has a battery of 6-pound guns up front. That was one of the things that's interesting, too, is the French have their guns, but their guns are in the rear of the column. For me, my personal preference is always have at least a battery or something as the second or third maneuver element in the column. Don't put it all at the rear. Players instinctively, though, put their artillery in the rear. And I think that's because they assume it's slow or it's going to be in the way. But the fact is, if you expect contact with the enemy, you want that battery ram up front. You don't want to have to call for it and have it take 30 minutes to come online. But that's my preference,
Well, I feel the same way actually
Yeah.
about logistics support. I don't know if you've played Sebastian Bay's game, Literal Commander, but there's this instinct to put my logistics support in the back. And last time I was playing, I didn't, like, thank goodness I was able to scrape by with a win, but I made the bad move of doing what Sophia was saying. I want my logistics support in the back to protect it. And I'm not exactly sure how it maneuvers in this game, but it moves considerably slower than my other units. So I was either sending other units forward quickly and then slowly separating them farther and farther from logistics support, or my entire infantry units were limited in the movement because logistics couldn't go as far as they could, which really hurt me both ways. And I'm wondering if that's a similar consideration in the game for these players.
Yeah, it may be. Typically, when we play our average, what we call open Saturday, because we play a game every Saturday morning at, I believe it's 8 a.m. Pacific. We've done this religiously for about 2.5 years now. Every single Saturday, even on Christmas, we play a Kriegsspiel game. And, of course, everyone's invited to join. But those games are a little bit more casual in their nature. And so what that means is we typically don't even use supply units. But in other games, when we also run play-by-post games, and in the play-by-post games, because you're playing by message on Discord, and it takes 2 or 3 days or even a week to process your turn, it moves a lot more slowly, so it's more considered. And yeah, we will have these logistic elements in there, and you've got to protect that column, and you've got to have these supplies, and you will expend supply as you do things. And you really have to pay attention to it. It ultimately depends on who's running the game and what the purpose of the game is. So sometimes we model it religiously. Other times it's just kind of an afterthought or it's ignored. I like modeling it, though. I really do think that you need to have something to hold back what I call the Confederate Space Marines. And I know that's a reference to, I forget the name of the gaming universe or whatever, Warhammer or something, I think it is, or something.
Yeah.
But I also know that when I play games like when I model the American Civil War, the Confederates the players just somehow assume that the Confederate infantry has this magical ability to fight its way across the map, and it's just this legendary lore or perception they have. And so yeah, I call those the Confederate Space Marines. And no, it's entirely fictional. Troops are limited in what they can do. They get tired. They need water. They need replenishment. Even if they don't see combat, there's only so much that you're going to get out of them. And that is one of the things that we try to model in our systems. I know in the systems that I've published, I just did an American Civil War system. Your units suffer what I call disruption, which is kind of this degrading effect that degrades the combat effectiveness of the unit just for being in combat. You know, a lot of times units in these games, they fight, they win, and they don't lose anything. And of course, that's entirely fictional. When a unit is engaged, it's going to suffer disruption. It's going to expend supplies. It cannot just push across the map like Confederate Space Marines. So, yeah, it's an important element, I feel, to model logistics. And I think if you leave it out of a game, you're leaving out a critical element. But of course, it also depends. If you're just playing a pickup game for a couple hours because you want to scratch that Kriegsspiel itch, that's one thing. But if you're looking for a deeper, richer experience, you absolutely have to model it.
Oh, I completely agree. I think a lot of World War II games do the same thing, and I think that was even like a real case study issue. Was it Eisenhower who was trying to like out logistic his available units at hand of like, we're just going to push all day, every day, and keep going? And it was like, no, people need to sleep. People need to eat. Like you gotta calm down. And I love any game that brings in morale. I think that's such a huge consideration. And I got to see a playtest. Jason Matthews, the designer for Twilight Struggle, he was actually playtesting a Civil War game that was bringing in morale, and I loved that because I feel like I don't see a lot of traditional wargaming topics kind of harping on those very, very serious considerations. You can't just push people as hard as sometimes we think they do. And I guess this is even a question for you, in Kriegsspiel, thinking of, the original games being played by the Prussians back in the day. Do you think that this game clouded their judgment in thinking about those considerations? Or do you think that in some ways it highlighted those considerations even more for them?
Well, I think the game focused a lot on, maneuvering and writing and transmitting orders. So some of that stuff is kind of secondary to that. And if you minimize the importance of that, I think you will suffer on the battlefield. Of course, we know the Prussians did excellent in the 19th century. And I think Kriegsspiel had a lot to do with it. So if it clouded their judgment, it didn't cloud it so much that it degraded how well they performed in the wars. Franco-Prussian War comes to mind. And of course, in World War II, you have the legendary Panzerschocklid, or whatever else they called it, where the French expected the Germans to tire and stop, and they didn't because, well, they were on dope. And what do you do then, But yeah, anytime you run a game or play a game or create a system of play, you have to have something to give the... Again, it depends on what your goal is. What is your purpose in the game? If you're just there to push blocks and have fun, if you're going to put all your blocks in what I call the big ball of anger and push it to the middle, you go all in like you're playing poker, and you just want to chuck some dice, that's fine, do that, I even say that in my rules, the rule books I've written. The purpose is to have fun, and if you're not going to have fun, then go play a different game. Seriously, just have fun. Play it the way you want. But if you want this rich, in-depth experience, here are some rules that you can use to obtain that. And you absolutely have to model morale. Typically in Kriegsspiel, the way we play it, morale is baked into the system. And again, disruption is like our catch-all term. And if a unit suffers too much disruption, it will break. And if it breaks, other units that are nearby it may be contaminated. The morale contamination may spread, and then you see other units break. And that is a thing that we often model. We don't call it morale, though. We bake it in. And the reason we bake in and abstract a lot of things is time. Generally, when people play, they've got 4 to 6 hours maximum to play. So we don't have time. Every time you add in like another die roll, I refer to that as minutia. Anytime you add any kind of minutia to a game, whether you're doing a separate roll for morale or you're modeling like weapon types. Well, this unit has a different weapon type. Or maybe you're modeling commander traits. Well, this commander is dashing. This commander is ponderous, whatever. When you do that, you're adding levels of complexity, and each level of complexity slows the game down. So the consequence of that is you've got 6 hours to play. You can either have a lot of minutia and model things very accurately and get through about half of the battle, or you can bake in a lot of the minutia and get at least to a decision point, which is more than half of the battle often. Or you can have none of that, and you can just fast forward to the end. So I think the compromise is, I like to play to a battle to where you think there's an inevitable conclusion, but I also like modeling all of that stuff, but it has to be baked in. So there's a compromise because of a practical considerations. For the Prussians, the players are a captive audience. You know, you couldn't leave. You're a cadet or you're an officer, and you're locked into playing this however long it takes, you know. But for us in the IKS, because we're hobbyists and we're playing mostly for fun, we have to make some compromises, and sometimes it's embarrassing, the compromises we make just to get the game played. But other times, other times we have deep, rich, engaging experiences though that are thought-provoking, but those are less common, unfortunately.
It's funny you say that. I mean, it's bringing up a little bit of like that distinction between commercial gaming, professional wargaming. I have to realize all the time that the game that I am making in professional gaming opportunities, I'm not making them for gamers. I'm making them for practitioners, and a lot of them haven't been exposed to games before, and some of them are like, don't even want to be there. They were told by a commanding officer, you're going, you know, you're a butt in a seat, and I show up. And so sometimes you get people that are really, really engaged with, wow, that's so cool, you modeled this, you incorporated that, you considered this. And then some people don't ask those questions, don't throw themselves in, don't immerse themselves, and that's rough to deal with in the professional wargaming world. Sometimes is like, I love to game, and I want to introduce some of those complexities, and I want to balance some of these mechanics because I think it makes a better game. But sometimes that's not what the players want, and sometimes that's not what they have the time for. And you're absolutely right, trade-offs have to be made, sacrifices have to be made, and that can be tough, but sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah. The other side of that too is the players. We get a mix of players. For example, we get that guy, and that guy is the guy who knows more about the battle than you will ever know. He's been to the battlefield. He knows more than the tour guides. And if you design a historical scenario, he will tell you everything that you got wrong.
Yep.
And if you use a historical order of battle, he'll also tell you everything you got wrong. Well, this unit had the Sharps rifle. And you're, oh, okay. And, you know, that guy will be correct. And so I don't like to deal with that guy. So one of the things we always do is we never do a purely historical battle, and we never use a purely historical order of battle. We are informed by those situations. Like this battle is informed by a historic engagement, but it is not the same engagement at all because, again, you don't want to deal with that guy. One of the other players... do you ever deal with that as a practitioner? Do you have that guy?
Oh, all the time. Well, some people show up and they just want to show you how smart they are. Right. So again, I think that in professional wargaming, we do a lot of, let's look at the order of battle in 5 years. Let's look at it in 10 years. Let's kind of project it out a little bit. And sometimes we'll introduce some sort of element of emerging technology as well. And you'll get people who go up and they're like, no, that's not a thing. That's never going to happen. We're 25 years away from that, or the opposite of that. Or they're like, no. In 5 years, I'm going to have the magic button and I can push it and it can kill everyone. And there's no after effects and there's no kickback and there's no consequences. And I know that I can do that. And so you have to deal with that as well. And we want to bake in enough flexibility all the time for players, give them an example of like, hey, here's some actions you could do, and then always allow the opportunity for them to say, hey, I want to do this other thing that you didn't say I couldn't do, right? And so then we're doing some on the fly, white cell adjudication of like, all right, so you have this magic toy that you want to bring on. What is it? What's its impact? What's its strength? What's its weaknesses? How could it be disrupted? I'm going to need all this information from you. And so you either get the people who are like, that's way too much work, I'm not doing that. Or you get the people who are like, all right, the rest of the day is going to be about this thing. And whatever way that the white cell adjudicates it probably won't be what they deem as appropriate. And that can be tough. And that's why it's sometimes great, having people in the room that are observers that outrank these individuals so that they can tell, all right, this is disrupting gameplay. Sit down and shut up,
Yeah.
But sometimes it is the guy, with I don't want to give specific ranks out there, but maybe it's the guy with the most rank in the room who's being the disruption. And in those circumstances, there's not a lot you can do. You just got to go with it. And that's tough.
Yeah, they have to understand, of course, that they're only diminishing their own opportunity to learn and have a new experience that could be eye-opening. And that's why wargaming is important. This is where you want to have those eye-opening experiences. You don't want to go into battle and, oh, well, there's a surprise. You want to get the surprises out. In wargaming, you actually want to get your hat handed to you. Over and over. This is the place to do it. I as the founder of the International Kriegsspiel Society, I am very proud to say that I lose most of my games. So
that's fantastic. Wear it like a badge of honor, right?
Right.
Well, and I think again, a lot of people will come in to this environment to play games, and they think that it's about the cool toys. They think it's about the shiny whatever equipment that is about beating their opponent. And it's actually about, no, I want to identify what assumption and beliefs that you have as an individual and why you're using certain things in certain ways and why you think it will work or why you think it won't. That's the information I want to capture. I don't really care about the toy. I care about how you think it's going to work, how you think you're going to operate it. I want to know the fallout of your decisions, your beliefs, and your assumptions. And I want to kind of hone in on that information. And I think that some of our players, who participate in professional wargaming don't realize that that's actually what we're taking notes on. That's actually what the report is written on.
Yeah. I have an idea. And, there's, in the Bible, one of my favorite verses is in Ecclesiastes, and it just says, there's no new thing under the sun. Nothing is new.
Nothing is new.
HIMARS is just archers. At the end of the day, a lot of these very modern weapon systems are actually you could reduce them to like ancient combat in a way, theoretically, I guess. There's an ancient equivalent, I suppose. Why don't you play ancient war games? Just say, look, we're going back to ancient times, and the most powerful unit on the battlefield is going to be the chariot. You don't get this fancy tank or anything. You don't get to push a button. Now, what do you do? Do you think that would help these people to understand that it's about the situation and how you respond to it? It's the man, not the machine, so to speak, to use a cliche?
That's such an interesting idea. Pierre and a colleague and I were talking about this other day of like, why don't we play more moon games? Like, he was talking about it'd be like, really fun to do a professional game on the moon, but that's not what sponsors want. And I'm like, well, why don't we just set it up as a proxy game, right? Where we're actually talking about a real life situation, a real life threat, or real life perceptions of the near and distant future, but put it in a fictional land, a place that obviously we wouldn't do this before, but introduce the same general notions of what's going on. And we laughed about it and we joked. We're like, that'd be cool. I don't know if we'd be able to sell a sponsor on it, blah, blah, blah. But that is exactly something that I would want to do. And again, hard thing with professional wargaming is that I am really restricted by what my sponsor wants and what they want it to look like. And because wargaming is such a buzzword right now, I get the feeling that higher ups are telling subordinates, I want a war game. And I want cool pieces and I want it to look pretty and I want that report on my desk by the end of the year. And people have this perception and this idea of like it's going to look like this, and it doesn't look like that, right? It rarely looks like what they think it's going to. And so it can be really hard to try to sell them on different manifestations of the essential questions that they're still interested in, but getting them to like remove themselves from that picture in their head of what they think it looks like, and say like, no, this is actually going to target the essential questions that you still care about. It's just not going to look the same way. That could be, the future of wargaming in my mind, if we could get people to focus more on that. But it is a challenge for sure right now.
Yeah, focus on the concepts. Look, there's a reason why we study Alexander. There's a reason why we look at the Battle of Thermopylae. There's a reason why we read Sun Tzu. And even more modern Clausewitz, right? Because they did not have the weapons or the communications abilities or the toys that we have today. Yet I would bet you anything in the world that the concepts, or I should say the problems, that a modern military commander has to grapple with would be perfectly understood by a person like Sun Tzu. The weapons are just different, but they would understand the problems. There's a reason we study these ancient battles. And that's why I think maybe one of the things we have to do with people to get them to focus on the problems, because Kriegsspiel is ultimately, it's about writing orders and communicating clearly, but it's also about solving problems. In fact, von Moltke wrote this whole thing called Kriegsspiel Problems, where there's scenarios for Kriegsspiel, and the essence of the game is you have to solve a problem. It's actually a solitaire experience. You write out what you think your answer would be and turn it in, and you're evaluated. But that's what it has to be. You have to understand, you have to recognize and grasp the problem and apply the correct solution. And that solution is almost never going to be, I push a button, problem solved. You're not ever hardly going to have the luxury of slicing through the Gordian knot on an actual battlefield. So you need to get that notion out of your mind, in my opinion, and focus on the problem. And if the technology, if the time period or the setting or the flashiness or the cuteness or presentation of the event is getting in the way, then the sponsor, I think, needs to recognize that and understand that I'm really just throwing my money away. And I really want my, I don't know what they would be, but I really want these officers, I don't know what the nomenclature is, I really want these officers to understand the concept and to recognize what's happening and apply the correct solution, which is hardly ever going to be I push a button,
Well, I think that's hitting on something that Kriegsspiel really, really harped on when it was popular back in the 19th century, is that it was a professional military training tool.
Yes.
We are not trying to solve the problem. I am trying to teach you how to solve problems in general. Right. How to communicate, how to organize, how to think about these problems. And I definitely think that wargaming today in the professional military sense hopefully still follows that as a concept. But in the professional sense, when working with the Department of Defense, there might be thinking about more of a specific problem. And they're like, I want a war game on this issue, right? Not how do I get this team of individuals to think about issues in general and organize themselves and react and respond. They want to solve the problem, not a problem. That's definitely a distinction.
Well, the problem, I think, again, if I could bring Sun Tzu or Alexander or any of these historic great commanders, Clausewitz, whatever, to that room where you're working on the problem, because I understand exactly what you're saying. There's a specific scenario they want to solve. They have a specific order of battle. They have specific tools and technology at their disposal. How can they leverage those particular assets to defeat a specific enemy? But at the end of the day, there's no new thing under the sun. And you bring one of these ancient guys back to life, they would say, well, here's the situation, and here's the chapter in the book where I talk about it. And this is where you're going to find, not the solution in detail, but it's a powerful hint or a powerful clue. It's direction. And I think it's very simple. At the end of the day, it can be reduced to that to some degree. And if you don't recognize that, you're going to be at a disadvantage against an enemy who does. So I think the concepts and the principles matter. They're critical. You have to study those and master those first before you worry about, well, this unit has, you know, a little bit more capability than this unit, and, you know, this weapon has more range. No, that's for class 490. You got to master 101 first, in my opinion.
I completely agree. No, I love that.
You know, so yeah. Let's get back into the game. We've been really geeking out over.
I know.
This is so much fun.
It is. It is a lot of fun.
I should just have you on the podcast, which I do every Sunday morning. I'm actually not doing it tomorrow morning. But yeah, we'll have to have you come on the podcast a few times and share some of your experience and knowledge.
Yeah, that would be great. That sounds like fun too.
That'd be very fun. Let's get down to the cavalry. It looks like the cavalry's committed against this column, this Austrian column in the south. They are going to hit that column where it's vulnerable, I think. I think that column's going to have a bad day. Of course, when you charge with cavalry, different umpires, different systems run cavalry different. In my systems, if you charge with cavalry, it's done for the day. So you get one good charge out of your cavalry, and then I actually remove the block from play most times. That's me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the horses get blown, you know, and they're not, it's just like a person. They need so long to recover, they're out. Of course, you can trot around and you can skirmish all day with them, but if you commit to a full-on charge, in my book, you've expended them. But they also hit hard, and if the enemy isn't ready to defend against the cavalry, they're gonna have a bad day. Let's pop down and talk to Achilles, who is running the cavalry. Do you see where he is in the Discord, Betsy?
I do. I will see you there.
All right, see you there. Okay. Achilles, hello. I'm here with my co-commentator, Betsy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you two?
We're doing fantastic. This is for the live stream, of course. I think you know. We notice that, well, I don't actually want to give away what I'm seeing on the table. But what is first of all, what are you doing today? As far as the Kriegsspiel is concerned, mind you. And what choice have you made, and why did you make that choice?
Okay. I am Kilmaine. I'm commanding the 6th Cavalry Reserve Formation, I believe it is.
Yep.
The mixture of Hussars and Dragoons.
Okay.
And I was moving to try to make contact with the enemy. The first phase, the scouting phase, try to find them. I made contact relatively early with some of their cavalry scouts, and so we started to follow their cavalry scouts to take us to where the rest of them were. Then once we started moving north, and I started to get reports of enemy infantry and regular cavalry formations further north of me, I started to push their screening scouts back to see if I could make contact with their main body. I've now pushed back their screening scouts and made contact with a column of enemy infantry and artillery moving up a road. So my last orders were to hold our position if they stop their movement and start to deploy. If they do not, if they continue to try to move, then we're going to charge the column.
Wow. Okay. Well, it seems like a logical choice. What are your orders overall? Do you have any orders, or are you just operating independently?
I've actually been operating independently from the start because my formation was detached from the main force. So I had no initial instructions other than the mission objective, which was to locate the enemy and attempt attempt to stop or delay any movement that they were making towards us. Other than that, I don't have any remit.
Have you made contact with the commander-in-chief, or do you even know anything about the main French force?
I have not received any reply. I have been, let's see, I've been sending dispatches to them since 0615, reporting each step as I've made contact. And my last dispatch was sent at 07, but I haven't received any replies from Massena.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, good luck to you. Betsy, did you have any questions or commentary for Achilles here at all?
I'm trying to think. I like the attempt a lot. It's interesting that you haven't been able to connect with the other French team, but it's great that you've been sending, your dispatches out there. So hopefully they're receiving them. Right now, since you're kind of out on your own, do you feel like you just want to go for it? Do you want to see if you can lean on that psychological component and intimidate, and see how far up the line you can continue to intimidate, or what are you thinking?
The latter is what I'm thinking is the more likely. I actually charging is an unlikely prospect at this point because I think they'll stop to deploy, and from that point, I'm just going to try to keep them deployed as much as possible. So if they're doing that, they can't move, and hopefully, I'm guiding in the rest of the French forces into the direction of where the enemy main body is. If they present me with a glorious opportunity, though, I guess I'm going to have to take it. But
you have to take it. You got to.
Yeah, exactly. But I suspect that they see the same thing I do. They're going to see all this cavalry sitting out there, and they're going to stop to deploy. And if they do, then I'm certainly not going to waste my cavalry in a charge against deployed infantry and artillery. Then we'll just keep bouncing around out here, and hopefully keep them frozen.
Sounds good. Well, hopefully we'll see some action here soon. I'm very excited about it. I'm sitting over here, in the commentator booth, like, do something, get each other, rooting for both teams.
Sounds like you're watching like a boxing match. Come on, guys, hit each other. What's the matter with you? Quit dancing.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, if I had some heavy cavalry, I probably would have charged these guys already, but I don't.
mean,
Yeah.
not for my entertainment alone, which I understand this is all about, but I'm looking forward to the next few moves for sure.
Me too.
All right. Let's head up to
All
the
right.
commentator booth. Thank you, Achilles. We'll see you soon.
You're welcome, sir.
All right. Well, there's the word from the French cavalry. I'm really curious why the French have not replied yet. The commander. I wonder if the commander is feeling a little overwhelmed, or maybe the dispatches aren't getting through. I want to investigate that. What do you think, though?
Oh, I'm very curious. I was even wondering if, with the fog of war and with, natural disruptions that Kriegsspiel kind of takes into account, that sometimes messages just don't get received.
Right.
Is there any system in the game that could be like, yeah, you sent a dispatch and it didn't go anywhere? Or is that too complex for the game?
No, we definitely have dispatches, and we model that. Again, it depends if it's a really casual thing. We have what we call a golden pigeon, which is just the dispatch arrives instantly, and generally that's like a negative because it means you're being sloppy and lazy. But on the other hand, yes, we will often model couriers, and there's even pieces that we have that we will put down to show the location of a courier. A courier can be killed or captured, but that's usually rare because couriers are not just going to ride into the enemy. They're going to go somewhere else. It depends on how strict of an experience you want. What I like to do, the way I like to play, is you have to tell the courier where to go. And you have to give them a location. And they will go to that location as best they can without getting captured or killed. And if the recipient is not at the location, they will look for the recipient in the area. So if there are friendly troops, they may ask and say, where's General Achilles, let's say. And if those units that they come into contact with or the officer would know, then the dispatch will continue on. If not, then the dispatch is not delivered, and that's the end of that, you know. So
That's very cool.
Yeah, I really like modeling that. I love modeling that, and I think it's important. Again, different umpires, different games, different constraints will allow us to model that, or we can't. But generally, yes, dispatches are a big thing. We even have a dispatch bot on our Discord where you type in a little command and it will send the dispatch after a little delay or whatever. So yeah, the dispatch delay, order delay, all of that is modeled in the game. That's an important part of it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, yeah, I'm curious. You want to go talk to the French commander and see if they're getting these dispatches?
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so that's going to be Say down there, right? Let's go down there.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, Say. You're muted.
If I unmute, yes, I know. Hello. How are you doing?
We're doing fine, but I'm wondering, how are you doing? What's have you heard from your cavalry force? I know that there's an independent cavalry force. Do you even know that force exists, and have you heard anything or communicated with them?
So all of my commanders, aka all of the players, have been communicating. I will say, though, that some are communicating more effectively than others, and so it is a bit of a struggle for me to process what everybody is sending to me and to interpret what they're saying. One of the big issues is, maybe surprisingly, that people aren't signing their messages. So when I get them all dumped into the chat, it's not clear who's sending what.
Yeah. In our games, we actually have a message format. You put the time, your name, who it's to, your location, and then the message. But you have to have those elements, otherwise it's like turning in your homework without your name on the paper.
Precisely. So, so in my last message out to everybody, I asked them to use that format. And to be more succinct, because I don't have the time to read everybody's essays about what they did on their summer vacation.
I call that a Moby Dick. I don't have time to read your Moby Dick. Sorry.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'm getting more efficient, but I am probably the bottleneck here and trying to interpret everybody's messages and then divvy out the orders.
What about your cavalry command? Have you heard anything from those guys?
I think so. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about people not signing their messages. So it's difficult for me to discern if it is from the cavalry, but I believe that they have spotted enemy scouts west of Foresto, and I believe that our second brigade has engaged the enemy northwest of Foresto. So 2 regiments and a squadron. So I believe that is the case.
All right.
And so I believe some of that is coming from the cavalry, but it is certainly challenging to figure that out. And the pace is moving a little bit faster than I can process everything at the moment. I think I'll get more efficient when I play a few of these, but at the moment it's a little bit faster than I can go through it all. Anyway.
Betsy, what are your thoughts right now?
So it's interesting to me, and again, this is a holistic perspective looking at everybody. One of the things that they did not anticipate with playing this game is the administrative communication challenge. So say this is your first time doing this. Did you anticipate the communication to be this hard, to be this kind of central focal point of the ability to actually execute the game? And how is that impacting your decisions?
Well, I did do my homework, so I watched Marshall's video about how to play Kriegsspiel, and I watched some of the other videos that were recommended. So I was prepared that the communication was going to be a challenge. I think what I didn't realize is I thought it was going to be a little bit slower paced initially, so we could get kind of our legs under us and get some experience with it. But we started moving pretty quickly even from the beginning, so I guess I haven't been able to quite catch up yet.
All right.
Well, from what I can see, you guys are doing a great job. So keep
thanks.
it up.
Yeah, keep up the good work. I'm looking through your dispatch, your communications. Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Yeah, I'm looking at one right now, and I don't even know who it's from. Yeah, 1st Brigade, but there can be more than one 1st Brigade on a battlefield. Message to commander: have encountered French infantry. Yeah, what do you do? So, yeah, I get it. No, that makes it a lot tougher. There you
Yeah.
go.
Well, I think we're getting the hang of it, though. I think we're steadily improving here. So I feel pretty good about, and plus the experience is really good. So
I
Well-
love that.
certainly, yeah,
Yeah.
certainly reinforces the importance of, for example, sit-rep formats and common terms and abbreviations.
Well, I'm looking at your orders and the way you have it formatted. You have the to, the from, the location, the time. And then you have request and summary and then orders and so on. I've got to tell you, you could teach us a thing or 20 from the looks of it. And I hope you come back and play more with us and actually teach us. And frankly, I think you should write a little primer for us and we push it out to our players. Because, yeah, dispatches and getting people into that discipline of signing their dispatches and telling you their location, that's huge. They don't report their location. You're like, well, that's great, but what's the location? Or just putting the time on it, because sometimes dispatches can arrive out of order for some reason. And that can mess you up. So,
Well, it
yeah.
looks like Yuna just replied, and look, she has a beautiful format now. So there you go.
Yeah, let me just
Lesson
put
learned.
that. Let me put that on screen real quick so people can see what the heck we're talking about.
You all are overcoming and adapting. I love it.
Yeah. My screen, I have to make it larger so people can see it because it's a 4K monitor or whatever, and everything appears small. But here it is. But yeah, you have a to, a from, a location. You have a time, which is written in where the location is. I usually just put it separate, but this is fine. I mean, it's obvious it's the time. You have the sit rep. You have the request, what they're asking for. End of message. There you go. Yeah, I mean, this is beautiful. And this should be a primer for our players. We have a lot to learn from you. And I hope that you will share more with us. So I'm very obliged to you.
Oh, that's really sweet to say. I think this is great. I'm really having both a good time and it's really educational here. And I'm delighted now that I have good comms with my Cav. So it looks like they're doing some really good reconnaissance for us.
Good, great. Okay, thank you very much. All right. All right, let's pop back up to the booth, if I can find it on my... Here it is.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, like you said, it looks like they're kind of overcoming.
Oh, and we haven't quite yet talked about gender and maybe some differences, pros and cons in the way that women might approach this versus men. And I'm not an expert on gender studies, so I definitely don't want to be like, I speak for all women.
Yeah.
Something that I can say for myself, and it looks like definitely for say, organization communication is something that women tend to love and be good at. And it's so great that this highlights, especially in a game like Kriegsspiel, when looking at war games in general, how important clarity is, how important organization is in conveying information to each other. And I love that they're kind of overcoming that challenge, that they identified that challenge and then found a way to overcome it.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge in our community, again, because a lot of our players approach it as a game. And I think a lot of guys have issues with communications. I know
I wasn't going to
committing
say it.
a hasty generalization, but let's face it. It comes down to empathy. You have to think in your mind, what is my commander going to think when they receive this dispatch? What's going to go through their head? Are they going to say, well, where are you? Little things like that. Kriegsspiel, the heart of Kriegsspiel is actually writing clear orders and dispatches. That is literally the purpose of the game. In fact, in the early days of the IKS, we literally had this ontological discussion about where are we going to go with this group, and are we going to make people turn in written orders every turn? And we eventually decided against that because it's time consuming and impractical when you're playing with people who are on a time constraint. But there is this acknowledgement amongst all of the master umpires of the organization that yes, you have to be able to clearly communicate, and you have to think, when the other commander receives my message, what questions will they have, and can I answer those questions preemptively so they have more information without inundating them with too much information. So
God, that's such a fine balance to kind of walk that tightrope of. I see that Jan joined us. Are you about to tell us the drama that went down with that cav unit in the south? I saw some dice being thrown.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a very happy day for Achilles, I think. So, despite knowing of the presence of the enemy cavalry, the Habsburg brigade did not decide to deploy. They wanted to reach those hills and then deploy there. But the cavalry just went in and took all their guns and routed a battalion. And
I did tell him that I wanted to see some action for my unit, so I'm going to say that he did that for me. That was pretty cool to see go down. We were focusing on something else, but in the corner of my eye, I was like, "What's going on down there?"
Yeah. And I think John is now making the right decision. He has immediately ordered the cavalry to fall back again after that charge, to reform and reorganize, because they are not made for charging.
Yeah, and I see the little S marker on the units. Can you tell our viewers what that means?
That means the cavalry unit is spent, so it is not able to perform combat, basically. But it can still move, and when they will rest for a turn or so, they will then reform and be ready to fight again.
There you go.
Which historically often happen. I mean, if you think of one very famous case, might be Blücher, who in his younger days, when he was still commanding a brigade of hussars, did during the Revolutionary War charge a French infantry column, I think 4 times in a row.
Oh man.
Like charge in, then retire and hide somewhere behind a hill, reform, then go in again, and so on and so on. So,
how old was he when he did that?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably older than we think.
What? So he was older than 30?
Yeah.
And he was a hussar, and he hadn't got himself killed yet?
I was about to say, what's the average lifespan for?
There is a
they
quote.
didn't make it past 36,
Yeah, there is a quote. Do you know the quote, Jan? I can't remember. I actually think it's on the box of what's the game that we just played a few months back? The solitaire game. The French. Is he? Yeah. What is the name of that game? Something Honor.
Oh, Legion of Honor.
Legion of Honor. I think the quote is actually on the box, but it says something to the effect of a hussar who hasn't got himself killed by age 30, isn't good for nothing. Whatever.
Yeah, that's rough.
And then again, you have cases like, Marshal Oudinot, who has been wounded like 30 times or whatnot during his career. So
yeah.
Like shot several times and stabbed and received saber slashes and whatnot. Yeah.
So Jan, you've obviously umpired a lot of these. In your opinion, how are both teams doing? Have they changed the way that they're approaching the game? Are they recognizing and identifying challenges and overcoming them, or do they still kind of maybe seem confused at certain elements or administrative rules of the game?
They seem to be somewhat confused. I especially have that impression from the French column. I think they had some trouble to actually decide to deploy and engage. But I think they are beginning to feel the pressure that Kriegsspiel creates in such situations when you don't have a complete picture of what's going on. And you need to make decisions in one way or another. So I think there's some learning experience already happening.
That's good. It looks like we're headed for maybe a pretty serious confrontation between the two teams.
Yeah, the battle lines are
Right,
forming.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
And with regards to the time, I guess that will probably be we'll probably have one major engagement here, and then we call it and go to the debriefing to analyze what's happened.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the hot wash. And yeah, just what the teams experience, what they learned, what it feels like. We were talking to Say, who I believe is on the French team, the commander of the French team, and she was pointing out just like the very coherent challenges with communication and clarity and receiving dispatches, not necessarily being able to determine in what order they were coming in, where they were coming from, what people were asking for. And to her credit, she overcame that very quickly, but you could feel that she was overwhelmed for a second of like, I can't get back to everybody in time. I don't even know who to get back to first. And Marshall highlighted like that's the heart of Kriegsspiel, which I think is so cool and important for the players, the viewers to understand about the game.
Right.
Yeah. You guys are doing dispatches?
Sure.
Because we have a lot of players who send no dispatches. Yeah, I'll play Cavalry, and then they send no dispatches.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's happened. You guys are getting dispatches.
Like, in your experience, have those people played the game before and they're like, I came because I want to do my own thing? Or do they genuinely not understand how important it is to integrate your grand strategy as a team across multiple efforts?
Yeah, probably the latter. I mean, I think that's what Marshall mentioned earlier. They approach it as a game, and they are sort of used to, from playing computer games and whatnot, they are used to just take the units, charge them in, and then get a result out of that, right? And they are in control of everything, and everything happens as they order it, and so on. And it needs some time to realize that this is not the case with a game like Kriegsspiel.
Yeah.
Which is due to the fact that it is processed by human umpires and not by a machine, who are able to take various different factors into account, who are hopefully somewhat versed with the historical conditions of whatever scenario you're playing, and take that into account and so on. And yeah, and then it takes some time for some players to realize that they need to change their mind and approach to things.
I'm going to ask a very distracting question that could be like a podcast topic in and of itself. So if we don't have the time to answer it, we could just put it aside for another time. But there's a lot of conversation right now in professional wargaming about introducing AI into maybe playing red or just being the other player. And something that you're highlighting with Kriegsspiel is like how important it is to kind of harp on the imperfections of the human decision from both sides. How do you think Kriegsspiel would change if you introduced AI as one of the players?
Well, to be honest, I've tried to play around a little bit with the available AI tools. They are not at all capable of doing Kriegsspiel at all. They are not even capable of writing serious reports, which stay on point. I don't know. I think you could have an AI which is capable of somewhat complex thinking, have as a player, but not as an umpire. There are very, very few games, digital games, which come close to Kriegsspiel. Some are in development, and we are following those closely, of course, which have a very complex AI and are trying to make it work in a way, but from the footage that is available, you can clearly see that they are far from really thinking like a human and taking all the factors into account. They usually also like the new players, right? Like a gamer. They act like a gamer. They just move all their forces in and then try to just break the enemy apart.
I want to say that as an AI personality, I fooled you guys this whole time. I'm actually just an AI. And I want you to know that when I war game, nothing ever goes wrong, goes wrong, goes wrong, goes wrong, goes wrong, goes
Right.
Yeah.
I had a colleague at work the other day, and I told her, I said, you need to stop treating me like a human. I'm not. This is a simulation. This is your world, and like we're just living in it. I need you to understand that.
I do want to point out on the topic of AI, though, the work of Dr. Ezra Sidran, who is developing General Staff, which is really a Kriegsspiel simulator. And it's very close to publication, and he worked for DARPA developing AI tools for military use, as I understand. But yeah, he's a professor. I believe he's retired now, though, and he's putting out this game that is very close to publication. It's been in development for like a decade, I think. But I do have high hopes and expectations. He has trained the AI to act and think like a human on a battlefield with the information that it has. The fog of war is baked into his programming. And from what I've seen, the AI is actually quite clever and gives people a challenge. But we'll see.
We haven't agree with that.
We haven't got our hands on it either, and we've only seen alpha, and I don't even know that it's in beta now.
Yeah. I've seen the latest after action report he did, and I think the AI is indeed capable of analyzing complex situations, but it still needs quite a lot of input to make really good decisions then, right? Because it still focuses very heavily on single objectives. And then just tries to push in, and it's not able to form up staged attacks and all that stuff, the complex stuff that's still not there. I think you could do that, but it still requires quite a lot of work.
Yeah. No, I agree. To assume, however, that AI won't ever arrive, I think that's naive. I think AI will arrive someday. And when it does, when it does Katie bar the door, we're in trouble. But I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say overlords? I meant protectors.
You're going to protect you yourself,
Yeah. So anyway, I think that's a big issue. And yes, that is a great podcast topic, and we'll have to take that one up as well.
That would be cool. I'll come as the subject matter expert on all things Kriegsspiel and AI. So I speak definitively on both subjects.
Yeah, actually, I think 2 weeks ago when we did our podcast on our Grand Waterloo, which was the largest civilian-run Kriegsspiel, the largest live civilian-run Kriegsspiel that I know of. I believe it had about 100 participants.
Wow.
Yeah, we ran it live it took us about 8 hours. But on the podcasts, which we did the following day, I told everybody that we had Achilles, who was the commander. He was Napoleon in the game, that he was an AI, a recreation. And I had some fun with it. I played with it. I acted like, well, this was the actual Battle of Waterloo. And we've got these AI personalities. And the three commanders, the Blucher, the Wellington, and the Napoleon commanders were all AIs. And we kind of had some fun with it. It was a fun little debrief.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, we do have really fun. Cool. We have a good time on the podcast as well as in the games. I'm wondering what's going through the Austrian commander's head right now.
Want to check in with them?
Yeah, let's pop down there and chat with the Austrians. Let's see, who is that? That's going to be...
Is it Sophia?
That sounds familiar, but let me look. Okay, she's not... There she's in Channel Valette. Do you see that?
I do. I'll see you there.
All right, got it. All right, howdy, Austrian dudes. They're muted.
We're France.
You're French?
We're French.
Oh,
yeah.
we are.
Oh, you're the French dudes. Howdy, French dudes.
Thank you.
I say.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
We're only going to talk in French now. Yeah, oh, that was our mess up, Marshall. It's Say is Habsburgs, and Peggy and Sophia are the French. Yeah, we messed that up.
Oh my goodness. Well, that explains a couple oddities. So you folks are French Command, and we'll just put you up there. Say hi on the live stream real quick. Hi. Okay, taking you off. There you are. Okay, we're looking at the map. We have the 30,000-foot view of the Umpire table. And what's going on? What's the plan? Have you talked to your cavalry commander yet?
I think that we have a lot of white flags in reserve, just because we're the French.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as combat starts, I think we'll just start waving those around. We have been receiving information from our cavalry, which is great, that they're headed north along with Joubert to fight the enemy's other column.
What's your plan right now? I see that you've deployed. You've gone online. What's the plan?
We're going to use as much artillery as we can against the Habsburgs, and see how many people we can knock out before we start using our actual troops. But it seems that there will be a huge battle at Volta.
Yeah, it looks like it may be shaping up that way. You think you're going to win?
Oh God, no.
The confidence, the amazing confidence.
Let me ask you this then. If you don't think you're going to win, why are you giving battle here? Why not form a rear guard and fall back?
So I do actually think that we can win, and it's good actually that we've sort of split the battle up into two parts, and that I'm here with Villette because I have the artillery. So this battle is a bit more evenly matched. And Joubert is there with Tilmaine down south. So we've sort of split our forces in what I think is a fairly even manner. And hopefully we can hold them here before they get to Guided Solo.
All right.
So I'm going to ask, because this is your first time playing Kriegsspiel, correct? So we'll probably get more, into the debrief and when we talk as everyone. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are running into in playing the game? What do you kind of find are the biggest hurdles that you're having to jump in order to execute your strategy?
Probably the lag in information. The fact that it's double blind is very interesting. I think it's great that we don't know where the enemy is until we encounter them. But the command and control and the difficulties in talking to our fellow generals makes it more difficult to coordinate, which I think is fun because you don't really see that as much in, for example, OWS or other modern games.
That's cool. That's cool. Peggy, how you feeling about it? Are you having fun?
Yeah, like
that was a long
everybody.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so I've been kind of waiting, hanging out, really, but I could have been more proactive. I sort of let Sophia take the lead as well because she just seems more well versed in everything. But so it's been hanging out kind of for me. But excuse me. Besides the time lags, I do also appreciate not knowing where the enemy is until you see like a dust storm or something like that. I think that's very fun. Yeah. And I don't have to, Sophia, I'm not going to go anymore. I was going to go at 3. I had a friend's barbecue, but they finished. So, I missed it. And so I could stay till whenever now.
The Kriegsspiel's more delicious anyway. I see we have an umpire here. Does the umpire need to go ahead?
I mean, we're not in a particular rush. If Marshall, you need to finish something, then we can wait. It's not a problem.
No. Umpires have priority, so it's all yours.
Okay. Let me just fix the screenshot real quick. Okay, there we go. Peggy, that is the wrong screenshot. Congratulations, me. Hold on. This needs to be.
All right, let's.
Also, Peggy, I just got good news from Kilmaine. Enemy column smashed.
Ooh.
1 enemy battery destroyed. 3 enemy infantry formations destroyed. This is great. Yeah, this is amazing.
Where are you putting the screenshot?
In Peggy's and Sophia's channels.
Oh,
Because
there it
they're
is.
co-op.
Okay, now I
Yeah,
see
okay.
it. Okay.
Okay, let me just get you your dispatch, Peggy. There we go. It is currently. Okay, there we go. Okay, the report is as follows. The 17th Light Battalion has engaged the enemy cavalry, as is seen by the smoke markers. The enemy cavalry has since redeployed south towards Qualia. The 18th Light Battalion has through its own initiative redeployed to meet the enemy cavalry in case they decide to advance upon you. Likewise, the 17th Battalion has slightly redeployed due to reports of enemy cavalry moving to your northern flank. Additionally, you can see what seems to be Samantha's or Joubert's brigade deploying to your northwest by north. The artillery is still advancing to the desired location. Your orders, please.
Is it possible to get a larger screenshot?
No.
Okay.
Well, way to ask. You know, you can always ask.
If you don't ask, the answer is always no.
If you ask, it's most likely a no. But
Yeah, but if you
Maybe
don't
it isn't.
ask, it's always no. So there's a chance.
We need a Kriegsspiel version of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
That's right. That's right.
trust me, we know there are some people in this community who are very much representative of that saying.
Yeah.
In any
So-
case, yeah, the orders.
Do we
please.
have information on the enemy is heading east, correct?
I mean, judging from what you've seen in the last 15 minutes, you're only aware of the enemy cavalry that has redeployed south towards your southern flank, and the reports. The cavalry that the 17th Battalion has reportedly noticed and redeployed to meet them in case they decide to engage you. That's everything you know from the last 15 minutes, at least.
Okay, well, I
We better
will
be ready now.
continue eastwards, slowly.
Would you like to remain in the current line formation while
Yes.
advancing? Okay. Now, what would you like to do with the 18th Battalion as they have through their own initiative redeployed to defend against the possible have redeployed due to the presence of enemy cavalry? How do you wish to proceed with them? Do you want them to advance east too, or just the 17th Battalion?
That might be a question for Peggy. I believe that those are her
That's-
troops.
Very much correct. Yes.
Yeah.
In that case, Peggy, it's your call.
Yeah. One more time. Sorry. What is the decision?
Okay, so Sophia wishes for your brigade to advance east. However, it is up to you how you want to proceed with that. Do you want both of your battalions to advance east, or do you wish for the 18th Battalion to remain in position where they have moved by their own initiative in order to protect against the possible incoming cavalry attack? Or do you want them to come with you regardless?
We'll all go attack.
This does... Okay. Well, attack. First attack what? And remember the 18th Battalion was, through its own initiative, redeployed due to the presence of enemy cavalry in your southern flank. Moving them leaves your southern flank undefended.
I think that it's worth having them head south.
Okay, sure. The 18th head south, and the 17th head north.
You mean east towards Volta?
East. I meant east.
Okay.
I meant east. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Be good.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's everything. Thank you.
Betsy, as a omniscient commentator, what have your thoughts been on the game so far, how it's played out, or the psychological decision making on the part of the players?
So, to be honest, Marshall and I aren't paying attention to what you guys are doing at all. We're off in our own La La Land, talking about our favorite games, favorite vacation spots. So we do have this, like massive kind of 30,000 foot view of what's going on both sides. And now that the game has progressed to a certain point, we're seeing a little bit more kinetic confrontation between the teams, which is really, really cool to see. So before we were just kind of, observing people maneuvering slowly in each other's direction. And now we're really at the point where everyone kind of has a general sense of where everyone else is at, which is really interesting. We were talking about earlier, Marcel and I were talking about, the heart of the game really being the ability to communicate with each other effectively with clarity, right? You can only see a small piece of the pie. And if you're talking with your team and sharing information, you'll get a much better sense and a much bigger picture of what's going on holistically. But if you're not, or if some of the dispatches are, not going to fruition, not making it all the way through, or not written clear enough, it can actually distort your idea of what's going on, which can affect gameplay. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I think it's a better hot wash question that we'll have for everyone when we're done. But Marshall, do you have any comments to that?
I think what's the name of the person? Sophia. I think you're probably an excellent fisher, because you're fishing for intel, but we're not going to bite. Players do that all the time. They're like, so how am I doing? We can't tell you, but you'll find out. But yeah, it's tough, I think, isn't it? I mean, like, what are you going through, Sophia? Like, what's this experience like? Do you feel something in your gut? Is this boring to you? Is this like, oh, wow, this is crazy? What's your experience like right now?
This is really fun. I wish that I could be on where the battle took place with a map in hand, figuring it out, though. For me, it's very easy to sit here, reference my little maps online, and very calmly say, okay, I think the enemy is here, or I think the enemy is headed this way with this speed. But if I were there in person, I think I'd be a bit more rattled.
Yeah. All right. That's cool. And then let's see, who else? Peggy, what's your experience been? How do you feel? You missed some barbecue, I gotta say. I don't know how you're gonna.
I know. I'm so sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I mean, yeah, no, it's honestly fine. I'm going to be excited for the debrief. Most of my time, before Sophia showed up, I was just me in a room. So I've been sequestered for most of the game. And I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
But it's felt, I felt very isolated. So I from any kind of action. So Sophia showed up about halfway through, maybe even 3/4. And so that was a little more engaging. So I'm excited for the debrief to see what is actually going on. Do you get the feeling that is everyone sort of isolated, or has there been a lot going on that I'm just missing?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. It's a universal experience to be beside yourself when playing Kriegsspiel. One of the problems that we run into is commanders tend to form what I call tea parties. They have tea parties, which is they leave their commands and they meet up with other players that are adjacent to them, and you'll get 3 or 4 players in one Discord channel. And the reason they're doing that is either they're bored or they're unsure of themselves or whatever. The official reason is, well, I'm coordinating. But the actual reason is they just want to hang out. And that's a huge problem, because then if you're away from your command, obviously you can't command. You've taken your hands off the steering wheel. How do you drive? But at the same time, Kriegsspiel can be a little bit of a solitary experience where you're in a room by yourself. And when we play these games, there can be a 10, 15, or even 20-minute. The worst I've seen is 30 minutes, depending on the nature of the game and the turn and all that. But basically, you're by yourself for 15 minutes, and you don't have any communication with an umpire or anything. But that's the time for you to sit and think and write dispatches, communicate. If you're not shooting something, you need to be communicating. Of course, if you got a wireless headset, do something else too. A lot of people have a little laptop going and they're playing Kriegsspiel and then they're just doing whatever. I do chores.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There's no harm in doing that. Obviously you pay attention to the game because you take it serious and you want to have fun. But if you're playing what we call marching simulator, and it never fails, there's always one player that has to play marching simulator, where for whatever reason you're in reserve or you miss the battle somehow, so the whole game for you, 4-6 hours, however long, they're out there by yourself. So, it's rough to sit there and just stare at the same screen for 6 hours. I don't advocate anyone doing that. But we also want to be realistic. So it's not like a regular game experience where everyone is guaranteed to be in on the action and they've got to make this critical decision and everyone has an equal chance of winning. No, we try to model reality. So that means the game is not going to be balanced. The scenario is not going to be balanced. It rarely is balanced, and you might be off on your own for an extended period of time. Well, and your screenshot's this big, it's the size of a postage stamp. What are your orders? You got 3 seconds. And that's what that's how you spend that 15 minutes. Is what am I going to do when those 3 seconds hit?
Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously this is a lot of people's first exposure to this, and we're really hoping to do this in the future. And when you come back, you're going to have a much better sense of how this works. And it's going to make the game a little bit more engaging. It's going to make it a little bit more interesting, I think. And we can also ask for a specific, scenario where it's like we want to start off like almost like confrontational. We don't want to have to do a right. We don't have to want to try and find each other. We could do something like that, and it could be a shorter game. We did say that we were going to wrap up around 3, so we're probably getting close to that debrief soon. But keeping in mind, like consider this as like the introductory, exposure to this, and we really hope to do this with IKS soon, and bring back everyone who was present today. And you guys will be, congratulations, you're now an expert, right? Like,
All right. But sure. And I was actually trying to mentally envision a commander in the field that's sort of like out on the wings, waiting to hear what's going on. So I did try to like mentally go there.
And that's the best way to play. That's how I play. That's how Achilles, my buddy who's running your cavalry, plays. That is, to me, that's the only way to play. But it does take time because it is processed by a human. So the interval between turns, what we call the cadence or the turn cycle, can be 10 to 15 minutes. And if that's more time than you need to think and ponder, I encourage people just, do something else that you got to do, browse your social media, whatever. It's not always that intense of an experience, but sometimes it can be.
Okay.
And, it's okay. Have fun. Are you having fun?
Yes.
All right. I've noticed there's a lot of things that we're going to learn from the gang of you. In particular, the dispatches. Say was preparing these beautiful dispatches that are even better than what we normally see. I think you folks have a lot to offer us in terms of knowledge and experience, and I'm excited to see you play.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've got to say that in my spare time, when I'm in between orders, I love scrolling through the Women's Wargaming Network Twitter.
There you go.
If you haven't yet, go follow them.
Okay.
There you
Alright,
go.
we'll do
So what do I search? How do I find it?
Their tag is at Women's Wargaming on Twitter.
Okay, just spell it all out, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Are
awesome.
people live tweeting about it?
I
They
don't
will
know.
be once you've handled it, Betsy.
There you go. Yeah, you're the
I'm not
communicator.
Sebastian Bay. I can be tweeting while I'm playing. I don't know how he does it. Like anyone who knows Sebastian Bay, you'll like be playing a game with him, watch him make a move, and then get a ding, and I'm like, how did you tweet about your move while you're making the move at the same time? Like, how is that possible?
Superpowers.
He's scary good at superpowers. Do we want to head back to the commentator booth?
Yeah, let's head up.
Cool. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Wow.
Thank you. All right. Well, there you go.
There you go. Good things are happening.
Yeah.
I definitely anticipated a little bit of what sort of trepidation maybe with I don't know what I'm doing. I might, I feel like I don't have a lot of understanding or visuals on what to do or how to go about the limited information that I receive. But something I really want these players, Women's Wargaming Network, to understand is that like it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what level of experience you have. Kriegsspiel really brings out the ambiguity of the scenario for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, newcomers beat old timers all the time. And I'm sorry to say, but there is a luck component, and I hate luck components, even though I like to go to Vegas and play. But the fact of the matter is, I tell people that my preferred game is 90% strategy, 10% luck. I like having the luck factor there just to kind of make it a little unpredictable, but I don't like luck-based games at all. However, the deeper I've gotten into Kriegsspiel, the more I realize that luck is a factor. In fact, I now say on a regular basis, it's better to be lucky than good. And it's true. It's true. At the end of the day, you can have this really well-considered strategy. You can have this plan, and the plan can unfold the way you want it, and you still lose because something else happened or something was wrong or you just got unlucky. And
it's so much about his perceptions too, being like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do this kind of fake move to try to get them to go over there, and maybe the person doesn't quite understand. Your opponent is like, oh, I see something happening, but I don't really know what's going on, so I'm gonna ignore it, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that can work to your advantage too, of almost like not knowing how to play.
Yeah.
I love being on projects where I don't know what's going on because I ask the right questions that everyone else in the room thinks is just the obvious, an obvious thing. But when you ask it and then you realize that people aren't on the same page about what's going on, that's a huge insight. That's a massive finding. So you're absolutely right. Not necessarily knowing what to do can sometimes help you.
I want to show down here, we have a great example of Fog of War. We have, I think it's the 18th.
It is, yeah.
The 18th. Okay, so right now the French have this beautiful opportunity to smash the Austrian headed column here. And they're blowing it because the 18th is turned south. They're oriented the wrong way. And that's the fog of war that's messing with your head. They're oriented this way. What they need to be doing is coming in on that flank of the 24th priests. Something, I don't even know what that name is, but there's a, that brigade down there, they need to be coming in on that flank, and instead they're just not. And that's the fog of war experience. I know that Sophia was like, well, what's to the front of me? What's to the front of me? She really wanted to know what she was up against to her front, and unfortunately the Umpire wouldn't tell her and didn't give it to her in the screenshot. And that's an effect of the combat and the smoke and the fog of war. So I don't think they were being more mean to her than average. But yeah, it's tough. And then, of course, you hear, well, there's this potential threat to the south. How do you not defend against that? And then, of course, the price of defending your south against an enemy now that doesn't look like it's going to do anything in particular.
I was going to say, doomed if you do, doomed if you don't, right? If the 18th had turned east instead and that cavalry unit had come to their rear, they would have been in big trouble.
Yeah.
And so they decided to, turn to the south a little bit in order to confront that threat. But now it's pretty much taken that entire unit out of the fight that Sophia is about to encounter.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the right decision would have been to make, having the limited information that they had, the small snapshot, there was no clear right answer.
Well, that's exactly it. Sometimes there's no such thing as a right answer. And
Yep.
and people really struggle with that. They think that there's always a right and a wrong or an optimal and things like that. And they don't understand what it means to win sometimes. And what I mean by that is winning can be painful. It can hurt. It can be a sad experience. It's not always this gleeful, joyful, we blew up the Death Star, let's all have a planet-wide party experience. No, even victories can be soul-crushing. I mean, Wellington himself talked about it. He said there's enough glory for all after Waterloo, and of course he meant that in a cynical fashion. He would get very depressed after battles, actually, because he was aware of the cost. And that's what people have to understand. And this is one of the big lessons I think Kriegsspiel teaches, is that life is messy, it's complicated, winning isn't all that great, and sometimes it's almost indistinguishable from losing. It is better to win, of course, but it's just a mess. It's just it's a mass of grayness out there. And sometimes players will be like, well, who won the battle? I don't know. Who do you think won? Okay, that's the answer.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, looking at the picture that we have now, can you make a clear distinction on who you think is winning?
I think the French are winning straight up in the front. They're smashing that head of column, and it really depends partly on, does this cavalry cut off the reinforcements for the Austrians, which I think they will. The Austrians are going to put their care and attention on that cavalry back there. And that will give the French an opportunity to overwhelm this front line at Foresto if they figure out that they're against a vulnerable force and move decisively to attack. So if the French give the order in the next turn, attack with what they've got, the French will win. If they don't, then I don't know. I still think the French will be called the victors here today, but I'm not sure. But I think
I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah. What do you think, though? What's your opinion on this? You might have a completely opposite take on it.
No. It's again, understanding the original objectives of the game. Well, the Habsburgs were looking, and they started off very strong, and they were looking to come down and take over Volta and disrupt the French's supply line. Correct?
Yeah, cut the supply line. Yeah.
And I felt like at the beginning of the game, they had a lot of momentum. And then it looks like once they got Volta, they're like, we're good. We're just going to stay here. And then they kind of congregated or aggregated their forces in that area. And I haven't seen a lot of movement or progression from them since. But I have seen, because the French columns to the north, they were way back at the beginning of the game. And they've slowly been progressing forward. And they're now, coming into the fight itself as a pretty significant threat, rather. And so the unit that's right in front of Sophia's, the Habsburg unit, they're in for some trouble for sure. And it doesn't necessarily look like they've got a nearby support group for that. So once they get taken out, they'll be gone. They'll be done. And I wonder if at that point the French will, if we were going to play this longer, what would it look like? Would the French continue moving towards Volta and retake the town? Or do the Habsburgs think that they've won because they've secured themselves so substantially in Volta? They're like, we're done, we won, So it will be interesting what the players think on how they're doing.
Let's pop down and ask Say what she thinks, and I think she's co-located with Kayla. How do you feel about popping down there and asking them?
That sounds good. I'll meet you there.
Okay. They have an umpire in the channel, so we'll listen in, and then when the umpire's done, we'll get their thoughts.
Sounds good.
Yellow marker on them, that means that there's some disorder in the ranks, and they're not doing so well, but for now they're holding. And the other one has this little black marker, which basically means they are getting a bit tired, but for now they can still fight. It's just... And the other infantry of Kayla has formed up in the second line. They are behind you, as you can see, with the pioneers behind them and the supply wagons. The artillery is behind the first line, ready to take up any position where you want them. And it looks like some of the cavalry that has left to the north has fallen back, and it looks like they have taken some damage. And in fact, you have heard some artillery fire from the northwest, so that might be that they have been hit by that.
Okay.
That is the situation, yeah.
That is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Commander Davidich, do you have any orders for us?
Okay, well, firstly, I would say the more succinct you can be in all of the messages you send, the better, because I'm getting long and difficult to interpret messages from everybody. And then I'm trying to have to figure out what everybody's saying, and then trying to figure out orders, and I'm not able to keep up. So anything you can do to make things more succinct and more direct, the better. Because I'm struggling. The other thing is, I don't know, I haven't had a chance to read everything yet, so. I'm just going to read real quick.
Yeah, I mean, from my brigade, if you weren't here, I think my orders to my brigade this turn would be pretty straightforward, which is those 2 infantry battalions I have in reserve, have them come up to plug the line, and that artillery definitely needs to unlimber and start and hit wherever we're being hit hardest on the line. I was debating like my one good infantry battalion having it wheel and try to hit the blue line from, I guess, the south. But I'm a little nervous about doing that because it looks like I'm pretty thin. That would be much. This is where, if you could tell, like, Yuna's, I don't know, if we have any cavalry left at all, like, it'd be great for them to hit this the French on either of their flanks from the north and south. So I'm not going to do any fancy infantry maneuvers. We're just going to plug the line and try to hold the line. We're going to unlimber that artillery, hit the French.
When you say unlimber the artillery, are you talking about the organic artillery that's associated with the 1st Battalion?
We don't have any organic artillery. There's
You're talking about my unit, so you want my unit to.
Well, that was attached to us at the beginning. So there was an artillery.
That's my unit.
Yes.
So you want, right? That was what I was planning too. I just wanted to clarify what you were talking about when you said the artillery. So.
Yeah, the artillery that's been with us since the beginning.
Right. So yeah. So my unit, and that's what I was thinking too. So okay, I was unclear who you were unlimbering. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, agreed. So I think that the artillery should engage the French. I was thinking from the cover and concealment of Foresto, if possible. I think that's possible. I don't know.
I think it probably is going to be like a de facto, because that's where they are, and there's really nowhere else for them to go.
So the normal artillery, which is not howitzers, they don't really fire over the infantry in this era. So you have to give them a direct shot, yeah.
Oh, we give them a direct shot. Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
The howitzers can do it from Foresto. Is there an appropriate place in the nearby area that the other artillery can fire from?
So the normal way would be to deploy them on the flank of your infantry line, so on the north or the south.
Okay.
That helps.
Looking at the picture that you sent me, there are some units from our team north of Foresto. What kind of units are those?
That is.
I don't know what the symbols are on the
Yeah,
map.
this is the cavalry. So the first two are the one that are further west are hussars, and the other ones are lancers. So this is kind of light cavalry.
Okay. So we have 4 cavalry units here, 2 of which need to regroup.
They are basically, so yeah, they have some, they're a little bit disordered, but they're not routed or anything, so they will take orders if you give them orders.
Okay.
So do you already know what you want to do, Kayla?
Let me read my orders here. Cavalry verified.
Kayla,
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have some info for you.
Okay.
From our scouts at 7:30, so from Una, she reports that the French have formed a second south-facing line of infantry. Some French infantry are also headed north. And then she asks if the cavalry needs to support an attack on the French with the 1st Brigade. So that is the question to you. Do you want the cav support?
I would say yes. I'm worried if we try to disengage right now, we might actually suffer more casualties than if we hold the line, then maybe we'll have a chance. So I would say again, bring up those 2 reserve infantry battalions to kind of reinforce the line. If the cavalry can hit the French from the north or the south, if there's any down there, and then I would say if there's howitzers, I would say let's use whatever artillery we can use. If it's a matter of repositioning it, or if there's howitzers within range, but definitely.
Can you give me a real succinct message to send to her, like 10 words?
So the writing of messages, you can still do that while we resolve the turn. What we need right now is what are your orders to the units around you, immediately around you?
Okay, my orders are the 2 infantry battalions in the rear reinforce the line that's engaged with the French, and then the artillery I have, I guess, needs to reposition to my right flank to the north, get into a position. I don't know if there's any elevated areas. I can't really read the map. If there is, we'll take advantage of the terrain. But basically, artillery gets into position so they can fire and support.
Okay. And if you say reinforce for the second line, do you mean they should move up and stay behind, or should they extend the line, or what is?
That's a good point. I think they should cut that one unit that's got the black marker on it. I think they need to move up and like reinforce the line. So we're not going to do any fancy flanking or anything like that. They're just going to move up and reinforce the line.
Okay, so rotate the units that are tired.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Kayla, did you fully assign the artillery for all of the things you need to do?
Yeah, not knowing exactly how. Well, no, just that one battery that I can see, because I think that's the only one that I can like actually control. So if you have other artillery, please jump in. because I only have this very narrow map that I can see. I can only see one artillery battery in it.
So, right. So the rest of the artillery will come and support you that I have, which is 2.5 batteries. I think one is over in Volta with Matt, but
So you want your artillery reserve to come up here?
yeah, I'm trying to figure out when Kayla says that she's assigning the artillery, if she's assigning my artillery or not.
No,
And-
no. Just the 6 guns that she had with her brigade.
Okay.
So
Okay, yes. So I would like to support her with the artillery. As you know, she said too, I want to flank a bit and see if there's some good appropriate terrain. I can't really tell. And then
Okay.
with the howitzers, since they can shoot from cover, I think that would make sense. They can shoot from behind the infantry line.
yep, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
And then I'm about to send orders to everybody else that says that the cavalry should support the 1st Battalion with the OPFOR engagement where feasible. That once the 2nd Battalion is reconstituted, that it should move to relieve the units that need relief from the 1st Battalion.
I will pick those up from your channel.
Will do. Thanks.
Okay, see you later.
Hi. Kayla, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, it sounds good. If you're in touch with the 2nd Brigade commander, we might just alert him that we are under duress. So I hate for the French to break through our line. So I don't know if they're in a position to.
Can you tell me how many units you're facing?
Right now, I can just see 3 infantry battalions. I don't know if there's anything else beyond that, but we have 3 battalions that have been beat up pretty bad. So we may be able to hold the line. I have like a really narrow snapshot of the battlefield.
So,
So
enemy contact northwest of Foresto.
anyway, if 2nd Brigade's in a position to exploit anything, now would be a good time.
They are regrouping in Volta because they got smashed pretty bad.
Oh, okay. Well then, that's all I needed to know.
So, but they're not destroyed. They're just need to reconstitute. So they can come and relieve you probably, maybe.
Yeah, or be prepared if the French break through us. Just give them a warning order that we're engaged. Hopefully, we'll throw the French back. But if we don't, then they'll be coming towards Volta.
So you would say that you are, what's the right word for it? You're engaged with the enemy, but suffering losses?
Yes, we're engaged with the enemy and has suffered severe losses. 2 have suffered moderate losses. So that's half our brigade.
All right, here we are.
Sorry for interrupting. We are calling the game at this point due to time. And I will stream my table so that you can see. Oh, maybe before I do that, let's ask, say, the Habsburg commander. What do you think? How is the battle going for your team?
Hi. I don't think that it's going great for us. I think history may be repeating itself. So we're a bit scattered. Our common operating picture is a bit iffy. Although I don't feel too terrible about what's happening near Foresto yet. I think we may be able to pull that one out with the artillery once it engages. So we'll see.
All right. And then Sophia on the other side. What do you think?
I think that we've been doing fairly well. I just heard that in the south we haven't been doing as hot. But I think that in general, we've achieved our goal of delaying the Habsburgs, and we will be dancing on their graves very soon.
Unfortunately, I think that may be true.
All right, great. So I will share my screen now so that you can take a look at the overall situation. And what we're going to do now is I will very briefly go over how the battle developed, and then we will talk a little bit about different situations and what could have been done, and hear about your impressions about the game and maybe things you might have learned from what has happened during the game, and so on. So, to quickly point out the scenario was like in the historical context of Worms's attack down from the Alps, like basically marching down Lake Garda, which is here in the north, and trying to unhinge the French positions, which had the French had like 5 or so divisions spread around. They were not really prepared for this attack, so they were quickly forced to fall back to westwards across the Mincio and lift the siege of Mantua, which was so important. Mantua is a very huge fortress. And in our scenario, we had Massena's division ordered, who was historically in this area as well, ordered to countermarch and attack the head of the arriving Habsburg column, which started the game in the general vicinity of Vallecchio and then started to move on Volta and had the objective to cut the Castiglione-Goito road, so this highway, this is leading down here to the southeast, and then continue southwards to Mantua, because this is very important to bring French forces down to there and prevent the Habsburg from re-establishing lines of communication with Mantua, which they want to do because half of their army is captured there, basically, or trapped there, rather. Okay, and well, according to this overall plan, the columns marched. We remove these drawings. Okay, pick blue. Oh, and we had one additional French division, which was a cavalry division, part of the reserve division the French had, which was coming up from Goito northwards to support Massena. And they sort of arrived in this area when they detected the movement of the southern brigade of the Habsburgs, which was crossing the ford at Pozzolo. If DTS allows me to do something. So they were basically coming across here and then moving into Volta and deployed here. Not before the French cavalry, though, hit the rear of their column and captured several guns and supply wagons. Over in the west, the French had split in 2 columns. One was moving down here, I think, and the other one came down here. And they took quite some time to decide to deploy when there was quite a huge Habsburg cavalry formation here. So in this area. They kept marching, which surprised me a little bit. But then eventually were sort of forced to deploy in a somewhat hooked line to prevent the cavalry from outflanking them. We can see, though, that there is at least a regiment of cavalry which shifted around the flank and has now taken Guidizzolo, which, however, will not, of course, make them achieve their objective because they are isolated by the French forces. But they are in a potential situation of striking at the French rear. However, they are completely unsupported by infantry or artillery. And yeah, the French cavalry division over in the east basically did not do much more than charging the rear of this column because they were still forced to reorganize, take some time for cavalry to rest and reform, and they did that. And at this point in time, the Habsburgs had then deployed artillery to fire upon you. And as you can see by these yellow markers, they did quite some work there. This situation over here is also very interesting. On the Habsburg right flank, the cavalry was repelled by a massed French battery of guns. And there is a sort of line battle going on here in the center. First, Habsburg troops, battalions are breaking in this situation, but it still can go either way because these forces are also disrupted. They get some fresh reinforcements here, which might roll up the flank, but the Habsburg do have a reserve, even if it's a small reserve, and the French do not, right? So there's a big hole in the rear. They don't have forces they can send up to take this or fill this gap if this brigade breaks. All right, so that's the the overall picture. And let's see, how many people are we? Maybe we have Betsy start and give just an overall brief impression of how the battle went and what you thought about the approach both teams took.
Yeah, for sure. This was, I'm telling you guys, it was hard kind of talking to you all piecemeal, being able to see the larger picture on hearing some of your challenges, knowing that you couldn't see what I could see and that I couldn't tell you what I could see. It was really, really interesting to talk to a lot of you. A lot of you brought up the issue of communication, the ability to write coherent dispatches, to come up with orders. I think at one point, who was it? It was Kayla and Say were talking about orders, and Say said, "Great, can you say everything you said in 10 words or less?" Like you've got this great idea that you want to do, but now I need you to be able to communicate it in like a very simple and coherent fashion so that we can send that information out to everyone else. And that's very difficult to do. I'm sure all of us have had that experience in real life. And it's even something I would say I encounter at work and during meetings, right? Where it's like, love what you just said. Can you say that in one sentence? Like, let's just kind of simplify that a little bit. Another thing that Marshall and I were talking about was, fog of war and military deception, and saying, when we talked to the teams at the beginning and their grand strategies of, we're going to move over here, but we're going to create this signal over here. So that kind of draws teams over. But what we're really doing is this. And very quickly seeing how some of those plans get unraveled, because maybe the bite wasn't taken, right? And sometimes when you're trying to do that, other players, your opponents, are like, I'm not really sure what's going on. Am I going to go for that, or am I going to not go for that? Specifically, one area we were looking for, I believe it was the French's 18th Infantry Brigade. They got some sort of information that cavalry unit was coming to the south of them, and they had to decide: do I want to reorient myself to protect myself so that I do not get flanked, or am I going to go east and help with this other effort that is engaging in some direct confrontation with the Austrians? And at first they decided to reorient themselves and protect themselves, and that is the cavalry unit kind of bypassed them and kept going on to, what is it, Cordizio? And so that unit for a second was kind of hanging out to dry and like, oh, I've reoriented myself, standing here. I don't really perceive a threat anymore. I'm not exactly sure what to do. Maybe they're just one click ahead of me. Maybe I need to move farther south, right? And they decided to actually reorient themselves again and go east, which I think was for the best. But Marshall and I were kind of doing it back and forth of like, doomed if you do and doomed if you don't. Because if you didn't protect your south, maybe that you could have gotten flanked by that cavalry unit. You didn't know. And there was no clear, coherent answer. There was no clear, coherent solution to that immediate perceived threat. So I know a lot of you too were talking about, I'm getting such a small picture of the battlefield. I think Sophia at one point said, can I please see a larger screenshot? And the umpire was like, no, like, this is what you got. This is all you got. And good for her for asking for more information. You can always ask. Asking is free, but it made it very difficult and incredibly frustrating for a lot of the players. And I also know some people felt some frustration with being siloed, of like, I'm out in my own channel and I can't talk to somebody else. We take for granted communication, and the feeling of feeling isolated and separated from everyone else and not having a picture of what's actually going on. And even though we've got a lot of technology today to help kind of elucidate that problem, clarity of communication is just as important now as it was then. And I really, really love that this game of Kriegsspiel really honed in and focused on that. And I feel like I've just talked a lot. So I'm happy to give it back to you, Jan. I don't know if Marshall wants to speak up as the other commentator. He probably has much better, eloquent way of explaining the order of battlefield.
Marshall, do you want to say something?
Yeah, and like me, who's always wrong, you're wrong. I don't have a more eloquent way of putting it. But let's see here. Where am I on the screen? Oh, yeah, my camera's being used by OBS, but I do have myself on the YouTube. I'll move myself there on the recording, so I'll appear there even though not here. Welcome to Kriegsspiel. It's messy. It's sometimes boring. It's also sometimes terrifying. And it's just like the real thing. And it's the closest to the real thing I think you're going to get in a I want to say like an academic or a clinical setting or something. I don't know if those are the right words, because I don't think they are. But, in your own home, I suppose. There's no war game or computer game that you can play that's going to, give you the same anxiety and the same frustrations that Kriegsspiel produces. But at the same time, it's excellent preparation for real life, because real life is filled with messy complexities. It is oftentimes boring, which is why we have Netflix and Target. And it is also sometimes, terrifying and, oh my gosh, what do I do? Which is why we have friends and other things that we turn to in those moments. But I think playing Kriegsspiel helps us to navigate that. So I think there's a practical side to it. I want to observe that the nature of the play that I saw today is at least a full grade level above the average IKS play that I see. And I'm not saying that because we want you guys to do more with us or anything, or I'm trying to create favor. I seriously, the quality of the preparation, particularly by the Habsburg team, which was really outstanding, the clarity of their communications in particular, I want to single her out as saying, here's how to do a dispatch. Please do your dispatches like this. Here's the model, follow it, and showing other people those dispatches, and me looking at them, I'm like, that's a work of art. It actually has the location. Wow. When in regular Kriegsspiel, we're like, oh, you get dispatches? You're sending dispatches? Wow, because a lot of our players don't communicate very well, even though that's the heart of the exercise. They approach it like a game, and they play it like a game, whereas this group here approached it professionally, and you played it from a professional perspective. Now, that was no defense, I suppose, in that I think you guys grappled a lot with a lot of the anxiety and uncertainty that the fog of war creates. And that's normal. That's totally normal. I also want to say that I played Kriegsspiel for a very long time. Newcomers beat me all the time. And the last thing I'll say is I saw competent maneuvering and performance today. So even though you felt like you might not have known what you were doing, or you felt awkward or on the spot, your enemy feels that way too. And you folks all performed wonderfully. I was impressed. And I believe that we have a lot to learn from Women's Wargaming Network and you. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Okay. Right, and one thing I was just we were just discussing in the Umpire channel briefly. We are usually providing players with a map, right? They can look all over the map, the complete map, all the information the umpires have as well. But if you go back into the historical situation, probably none of these commanders would have had a map, let alone as detailed as this one. Right, they might have a hand drawing of their cavalry scouts saying, okay, over there's a town and there's maybe an enemy battalion or whatnot. So, but yeah, especially for introductory games or for just recreational games, that's a bit rough to leave players completely in the dark, but just a thing to think about. Okay, let's maybe move on and hear from both of the cavalry commanders, because they had a somewhat special role. We didn't have much mixed brigades in this case, Later on, you will see, of course, in the Napoleonic Wars, divisions that have cavalry and infantry as well. But in this case, it was mostly separated. So they had a bit of a mix of objectives. So maybe, what was your impression of that?
Sure. So I will have to say, in the way for me the boredom and frustration manifested itself is I did end up capturing a scout and just torturing him. That was my last dispatch.
Wow.
I didn't get stuff out of him, by the way. But I think the being outrunning your command and control obviously instantly creates a lot of not just anxiety, but the how am I supposed dilemmas, right? Everything is about. They always teach you to create dilemmas for the adversary, but like this just creates a dilemma for you. And so I was like, if I've massed my cavalry, the only reason you would mass your cavalry is to engage. But then if I disperse them, there's no way I can do command and control, right? And then I'm like, okay, what like century is this? What are you supposed to mass? What are you supposed to disperse? Right? What are you supposed to sort of coordinate with? Trying to do combined arms. I was trying in my dispatches, and I don't know if 1st Brigade ever got the message, right? Is like trying to deconflict fires, like we'll try to split the forces. When faced with a French line, right? I'm like, okay, ChatGPT says like use the Lancers to come across and flank them, right? So I'm going like, all right, Major ChatGPT, we'll take your advice. And I was trying basically a pincher maneuver to outflank them, and then trying to send a message back through say for the artillery to hit the front but not the rear to try to deconflict fires, because like I think every movie we watch, like you know how it goes with the cavalry and the artillery. But then I had to split my forces, so then I lost situational awareness of what the forces north were. But I was also trying to protect both flanks of 1st Brigade, right? So like I'm trying to flank, but I'm trying to prevent the adversary from flanking. But like I lost situational awareness, and then the French forces to the south, you chose correctly. I kept trying to outflank you, but because you kept swinging, I'm like, I can't outflank them. And now I had this dilemma at that point of, do I try to get the operational objectives? It made me feel like I was abandoning 1st Brigade, but I'm like, there's no good if you, right? How many times do you read like histories of this time and they're like, they just got caught up in the battle and they missed the objective. So I'm like, I have to make this decision. I don't feel great about it. And again, right, the cavalry I have massed cavalry just off by itself, which doesn't make any kind of sense. But I'm like, but I have to like reach the objective, so I had to make that choice. But had the French units not swung up and shown me the front, had you not done that, I would have attacked you in the rear. That's the trade-off I'd have made. So you chose correctly.
All right.
Wow, that was something that Betsy and I were looking at and commenting on the live stream. That very dilemma for the French commander and the cavalry there. That was really cool to have that insight.
Well, I would say that she did a lot more thinking than I did. And she seems to be a lot better at it than I was. I came across the out scouts for the Habsburg cavalry relatively early, and we just kind of latched onto them. I was essentially following them to the main body, and once we encountered their infantry on the road moving towards Volta, I had a choice. It was I could try to attack them or try to get them to deploy. So if they deployed, which is what I expected them to do, we would have held our position and just froze them in place. Because as part of what the cavalry is doing is one of the weaknesses of cavalry is that once you use it, it's basically useless for a while. So it's kind of a glass hammer in that sense. So you want to be careful with it, and you don't want to expend it unless it's going to be something decisive. And I needed to explore the situation more and get more information first before I decided to use them. However, they presented me with the opportunity and it was too good to pass up, so we charged the tail end of the column and took it out. Then I was going to, then I started to shift to the, what would be the northwest. I was headed towards the main road between Volta and Foresto. And again, I'm trying to expand on the situation, figure out where everybody is, and see where I can be most valuable. And again, with the cavalry force, I'm looking for target. I'm not going to hit deployed infantry because then I'm just wrecking my cavalry. And if I can keep them frozen in place and deployed, that's just as effective as attacking them because they're not doing anything. If all they're doing is facing me, then they're not in the fight. And if I can keep them in that position, then I'm taking out however many are facing me. They're not fighting my main force. And at the same time, I'm also sending continuous communications back to the army commander to try to guide our main force onto them. So once I've found their infantry, I've found their main body, and now I'm just trying to guide the rest of our army onto them, and I'll attack a target of opportunity, but for the most part, I'm happy to just keep them deployed and keep them frozen in place and guide in the rest of the army onto them.
Right.
So essentially, that's what I was doing.
An interesting asymmetry in both forces was that the French cavalry was completely separated from their main body. I mean, the main body had one squadron of light cavalry, whereas the Habsburg column had their massed cavalry sort of in front to cover all the various brigades, and then at Foresto forced the enemy to deploy and thereby buy time for the infantry to deploy as well and then go in and attack, right? Okay. Maybe let's hear from Matt. Why did you decide not to deploy earlier?
Let me unmute. Well, as far as timing, I knew the larger objective was to get 1st Brigade through, which had a larger force and the cannons. And so I didn't want to lose that key terrain of Volta and delay the main operation to keep moving west. So I knew we would be a little vulnerable heading towards Volta to set up a defensive position. But I didn't have a good sense of the pace of things, and I should have reorganized my order of battle to better protect my cannon and baggage train as we were moving north to set up position. It just took me the pacing of it took longer than expected, and I didn't realize I hadn't reorganized my order of battle. The other thing was I did have a squadron detachment, but with the pacing of things and the spacing of the map, I realized too late that Foresto was too far for my squadron to go out to really support my regiments. I think later, their mission shifted to support 1st Brigade as they did make it through Volta unopposed. So that, I guess it worked out in that sense, but I did take a beating with 10th Regiment from that initial cavalry attack. I do think we were able to gain a little bit of initiative just by chance, because as the main army's baggage train and cannons were moving through Volta, we're able to make that connecting file and then direct fire onto the cavalry who were reorganizing out in the field. And so you see the damage counters there. So it'd be interesting to see how things played out afterwards. But yeah, there was definitely a cost to get to that position to hold Volta and get the brigade through. But I was willing to take that cost, though, because I understood we were supporting the larger army's effort.
Mm-hmm. All right. And as you mentioned, the order of march and composition of your brigade, let's maybe hear from Peggy and Sophia. What do you think, and maybe Samantha as well? What do you think in retrospective about how your marching columns were arranged? Would you, if we would replay this scenario, would you do it the same way as you did? Or would you change the order of march and where your artillery is, for example, or how far the brigades march from each other?
Who's that to?
Sophia, Samantha, and Peggy. One of you.
I would probably have moved my artillery further up in the column. My concern was that the Habsburgs would get past us, and I just wanted to cut them off. So I was trying to move as quickly as possible. And because of that, there was a turn where I just had to wait for my artillery to come up and be ready for battle. So I would probably reorganize that to move it further up once we got closer towards the enemy. But we were just so blindsided by the enemy reaching Volta quickly that I think we wanted to just get there as fast as possible. We didn't expect them to get as far as they did within the first 2-3 turns. And when they reached Volta, we were still at Cavriano, if that's how you pronounce it, which is further up to the northwest. So we were very desperate to get down there.
Right. And what I was wondering back at that point in time, when you received reports of enemy cavalry, maybe Samantha can answer that question. Did you ever think about deploying in these hills and just take a defensive stance rather than continue your marching columns along the road into the enemy? Or was that nothing you thought about, or was there a reason not to do it?
When I looked at it, my concern was that if we did try to stay in Cavriana, then we would be too far north of Kilmain's forces coming from the south. And as it was just cavalry, because I was trying to remember, how cavalry forces were, and that he didn't have infantry. My fear was that if we stayed up in Cavriana, then we would leave Kilmain without any infantry reinforcements. And since cavalry is like shock and awe, didn't want them to be kind of left hanging and then trying to run away with their horses. Maybe would have, instead of going through Cavriana, would have come through that wrenched down that southern route a little bit sooner if we could have, because I think we went straight through Cavriana and then cut south. Right, Sophie? Since you were with me? And I think maybe
Yeah.
I think you moved along this road and then somewhat southwards.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, and then what was the impression of the combat going on? Did you have any specific ideas how to approach the combat once it was clear that it would occur here at Foresto? Kyla, did you have any specific approach or ideas? I mean, as it turned out, and Yuna mentioned that before, was somewhat reminded me of a 7 Years' War battle, right? You have the line force in the center and then heavy cavalry wings protecting that formation. Was that by purpose? Did you try to coordinate, or how did you approach this?
Well, I think to take it from the beginning, I think our planning helped me immensely because as what was to be the main effort, to be honest, I didn't really have a lot of information, and I didn't really encounter a lot until the very last couple of turns of the game. So I actually, for what it's worth, I feel like we did pretty good on the Habsburg side. I'm actually pretty happy with it. I mean, we had a plan, we stuck to it. I will tell you, there was in terms of my decision points, I made like that one decision to deploy my like light infantry north of Volta. I think that was fine. It was, in the end, it didn't need to do it, but I don't think it would have helped that much. But it was a very deliberate decision. I think the second major decision point I had was when I was in march formation in a column, and I could actually see there were some French units to the south of me, and there was some fighting, and I was like, I'm going to trust that 2nd Brigade is engaged with them, because my thinking was that's where they're supposed to be. And if I were to like move out of position, then there was no chance we could meet the objective. So I just stuck with the plan. I found when I had a good sense for a little while what was going on with Una, because we were so close. And when I realized that she was deployed to the north and south of me on my flanks, I felt really good about the decision to move. Okay, now's the time to make that decision to move into like line formations. I think one thing I didn't really have a clear idea though as to how to use my artillery. If I were to go, it was a good idea to attach artillery to my brigade. Retrospectively, if I was going to rewind it, I would take in the howitzers because they were lighter. And they could have fired over. I was surprised at one point because I asked like, "Where's my cavalry squadron that was attached to me?" And the answer was Una took it, and I was like, "Oh, okay." They're popping. I don't think it really affected the gameplay that much. It might have made like the only thing it possibly might have affected it if I had had a little bit better sense as to where the French were. I might have made the decision to like set up my artillery sooner. But I'll be honest, given that I hadn't really thought through how to use my artillery at that point, I was just thinking they could fire over me. Even if I'd had that information, I don't think it would have really made a big difference. And then I'll just second all the things even after the feedback I got from Say, it's like I thought after I started using the format, I was like, I thought I was being like concise, and then you're like, be more concise. I was a little confused at that point too. Like when you dropped into my channel, I was like, where are you? How are you talking to me directly? Are you on the front lines? And I was a little bit confused as well because you kept talking about your artillery, and like I don't even know even now what with the rest of the artillery, like what happened to it during the game, because I never really saw any of that. So
I just want to say that it was a surprise to me that the cavalry came back to me, because we had attached one squadron to each of the infantry brigades so they could function as sort of organic screening and organic, under the brigade's command, their ability to do that. So I don't know why they I didn't know why they appeared back under my command.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it just weirdly happened. I don't know. It's our Jeb Stewart guy. And then I guess I would just say it's like I went into this game thinking like, oh, this is going to be about communications and control, but I kind of was under thinking how important it was to be able to develop and maintain a common operational picture of your own forces. That wasn't something I was thinking too much about when the game started. I was really I was probably more thinking about, oh, when can we start to get an idea where the French were. But most of the game was just trying to figure out I just had a very vague idea most of the time of there was multiple turns where I had no idea what was going on. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick to the plan. I'm going to stick to the plan.
All right. Okay. Peggy, maybe let me to double check. These are your forces, right? Yeah, these two demi brigades. How was it for you once you sort of detected that large enemy cavalry formation and then sort of were forced to, I guess, to deploy there? I think you did discuss for for a while to even fall back in the face of the enemy, which I think would have created a very interesting situation there. But yeah, how was it for you?
Sure, thanks for asking. Well, first because our team had agreed prior to the game to continue towards Volta, I didn't want to stop that objective because that's what I thought my team members would be expecting me to do. We were supposed to meet up there, so I didn't want to change that plan radically. And then there was a sighting of dust or something along the way, and so that's when I realized the battle had come to us. Which again, I was surprised, just like Sophia said, because they got there really quickly. Like we were, and yeah, I followed Sophia's lead for a lot of it, but at the same time, I was pretty the opposite of averse. I was happy to take the risk, knowing that this was like a fun, friendly introductory game, and didn't want to hedge my bets too much. Wanted there to see some action also, because I was like just sitting there for a little while, and so yeah. So and then Sophia had the idea to have one unit. So I was going to go all in, and then Sophia was like, "Why don't we have one stay?" And I think that's the one that Vera said that was the right move, because the Habsburgs weren't able to flank around. So that was in that scenario, being a little cautious was worthwhile.
Peggy,
that's pretty much it.
Who's the puppy behind you?
Oh, this is Rocco. He's his Italian name, so we said before.
Aww.
He's actually, I got him from the Philippines, but he's like a cat. He likes to sit in the window.
I got one of those too that thinks she's a cat. But hi, Rocco. All right, sorry, dogs are a weakness for me. Carry on, Jan.
All right, so let's hear from Felix and Nick maybe what their impressions were. They umpired with me. Mahmoud had to go early, but you two are still here. What do you think about the battle? Any special situation you think is worth discussing, or anything else?
I don't think I have much to add other than what's already been mentioned. I think that the Habsburg cavalry deploying there near, what was that town? Fresno, in an attempt to delay the French, and that worked. And that was a pro move. That definitely, had the French been able to continue, they might have reached, if not Volta, then much closer to it. So that was exciting to see. But yeah, that was a good game. It was fun to watch.
All right, and Felix?
Yeah, I mostly find it interesting that you guys all have cameras on, because this is something that is super rare for our group here. But it's actually really nice because you get to see people, and but I don't actually have a camera attached to this computer at the moment, so sorry about that. Yeah, it was really, really interesting, really cool game. I think it's like normally we have like 1 or 2 or 3 new players in our games, but with a group of completely new players, it reminds me a lot of when I started playing this game, just this like kind of flailing in the dark, and then you're under so much pressure to make decisions, and you don't have the information, and then you still have to make a decision. Yeah, but I think everyone handled it really well, and it was a lot of fun. Thanks for playing.
I'm so glad we had our cameras on so we could all see Yuna show us how she was gonna flank. That was my favorite part, the hand signals. And I don't know, if we're getting close to wrapping up, but I wanted to just give a massive shout out to Jan and Marshall. Like, Jan's the one who reached out to me through Twitter and proposed this, and I'm so very glad that he did. And worked with me and held my hand through this whole process of, setting this up, and meeting with me to like kind of figure this all out. Commentating with Marshall was so much fun. I knew it was going to be fun regardless. I didn't know it was going to be this much fun. So I think Marshall and I are the ultimate winners in this entire scenario, since I don't know if we can tell necessarily from this who won versus the Habsburgs or French. But I did want to give a quick opportunity because I'm the head of board gaming for WWN, but I wanted to turn it over really quickly to Yuna, who's the president of WWN, just to say a few words about the experience.
First of all, thank you so much for spending all this time and helping us get into this. And then we're always looking for opportunities to help train the women in wargaming skills. This was the first time I'd played a Kriegsspiel. Like I refer to it in so many sort of briefings in wargaming. This was the first time. I have to say I was like really stressed out the entire time because they told me like there was like, or I could hear artillery in Volta, and then I'm like, oh my god! I left it wide open to the south with the avenues of approach. So the whole exercise is actually like very informative because, right, it really drove home the point for me about if you play the war game, you realize a number of things that you never get from just talking about a briefing that just goes through the plan. But really can't thank you enough. And I really hope that for the women who came, that this was instructive, and I think this was just a great experience. So thank you, everyone involved.
Well, thanks a lot for playing. If there's one overall thing to this battle which I would sort of critique in a constructive way, it would be even stronger use of combined arms. So we have seen that sort of with the Habsburg cavalry and then the deploying infantry. With the French, they had it a little bit more difficult because of the split up cavalry division. But we have mentioned that already, right? Bring the guns up further to the front to have them and support the infantry there, either offensively or defensively, if you just want to hold that against the cavalry. Because infantry, I mean, if infantry is deployed in a line here, they can repel a frontal attack by cavalry, no problem. But as soon as the cavalry starts moving around or something like that, they start getting into trouble. So you really want to have something to punch back, even if you are forced into square and cannot move. And same goes, of course, with having cavalry there to force the enemy into square, immobilize them basically, and then use your artillery and infantry to neutralize them in that point. But otherwise, yeah, I also thought that was a pretty interesting and a well-played game. So thank you very much for that. And I hope everybody had something to take away from this game, and we would be very glad to run another one in the future if you are interested. Anytime, just get in touch. And yeah, that's probably my closing remark. We can open the forum to all of you. If anybody has some additional remarks on the game or the experience or one aspect you will take away from this one, then please go ahead.
I'm gonna real quick, Jan, I'm just gonna butt in here because in a moment I'm gonna go up to the commentator booth and wrap up the live stream for the recording. Then you guys can have continue the post discussion. But I do want to say it is obvious that you folks have something you can teach us. And I know you can't see my face on the screen right now. I actually have it up on the YouTube though. So if you see the YouTube, let me there you go. I'll take my proper place on the matrix there. Anyway, we have a lot to learn from you, and you have a lot to offer us, and I really hope that you'll bring your loaves and fishes to the table so we can multiply them, please. So whether it's better formatting for dispatches, better communication, just the fact that you all scouted, like you had scouting elements out at the beginning and you utilize that. It's just one of these things that we don't do, but we should do, but our players don't do it. I think that if you were playing against our regular, everyday rank and file IKS members, you would actually just smash them because you have the right attitude and the right perspective. I think you would humble them, and that's what some of them need. But I do think we have a lot to learn from you, so I hope that you'll stick around, continue to come back. Jan can talk more about the inclusivity of the space, the safeness of the space. That's really something that he's particularly big on. He's the one that connected us with the Derby House, and we are a signatory of the Derby House principles. As administrators, we have struggled, but always ruled in favor of making this a safe and inclusive place. We've had debates, and discussions, because we want to be fair to everybody and all that, but at the end of the day, safety is paramount, and we have done a lot to ensure that in our community. So it is a warm, welcoming, and inclusive community. We've had a lot of people comment on that, so please, I invite you to benchmark our community. Just lurk if you want, and if you feel comfortable, go ahead and dip a toe in and then dive in if you like. You will be treated with kindness and respect, and I think that what you have to offer us will be very well received. So I appreciate you all greatly. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Marshall. Yeah, feel very much welcome to join any of our games. I think somebody already said the server is quite active, so there are lots of games are going on. We do have at least one open live game, so that's a bit more casual, of course, every Saturday, and then we have tons of play-by-text games, which of course cannot reproduce the same tension as a live game, but they are more convenient to play on the site, so to say. But yeah, anytime you want us to run another dedicated event, we can do that, of course, if you're interested. Or if you want to do that yourself and just sort of need some organizational or infrastructure support or anything like that, we would be glad to help you.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Una.
I will just have to say, I was actually immensely relieved, because I'm like, okay, you don't have to coordinate air power, space, cyber, logistics, and other enablers. I'm like, thank goodness this is so simple. But I'm sorry that was my thought.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, there are we do of course also have systems for modern warfare, right? So they probably don't take the cyber component of it too much into account, but modern systems and so on as well. Because I think it's important to say, if you're referring to Kriegsspiel, there is not that one Kriegsspiel, right? But Kriegsspiel is more of a sort of a method, or one could even say a sort of a philosophy or an approach to how to set up a war game. And then there are numerous historical rule sets, of course, which are still available. And our community is also very active in designing and reiterating systems continuously. So even the system we are using today is still in continuous development, and with getting feedback in and doing more research and so on, it keeps evolving. So if you have any input on that, even though you might not be that familiar with Napoleonics, maybe, that would also be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think, one of the opportunities we didn't get to kind of take advantage of was having someone from WWN participate in the umpiring, which, just because of the numbers and last minute things that came up, we had to do some shifting around, and I really appreciate you all being so flexible with that. But next time we play, and we will be playing again, I really look forward to having some WWN people seeing that perspective of umpiring, because Kriegsspiel to me is a 3-player game. Playing the umpire is a playing position. And there's so much richness to learn and kind of pull from that. So I look forward in the future to us doing this again, and getting our hands and our toes dipped a little bit more into the umpiring and the adjudication of it all. I think we are getting close to wrapping up. I know that we were a little over schedule. I can't thank all of you enough for setting this up, participating actively in this entire event. I know it was, a good chunk of your Saturday. So thank you all for that. And then staying on for the hot wash. I think that I love the hot wash. It's almost also my favorite part of a game, just seeing everyone's insights and talking about it. So that was really, really wonderful for me as well. And if anyone else wants to stay on the channel and talk about the game, please feel free to do so. But I really understand if you've got other places to be. I'm just so grateful for you all spending this time with us today playing Kriegsspiel. This was awesome.
All right, and I'm here to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the live stream. Here I am. Let me pop up here. Look, I'm just manipulating the... I can't close this, but anyway, the thing. Anyway, I want to thank all of you who are watching this in the future, because that's when you'll be watching this. I want people to understand that they are welcome to come and join the International Kriegsspiel Society. We have a website. It's kriegsspiel.org. It is a safe and inclusive community. Everybody is invited. We just want you to come, whether you just want to come and play some really cool war games and have some fun. Come on in. We've got games at that level for you, and they run like every day. And then, of course, if you want a more serious, in-depth experience with all of that minutia I talked about earlier, come on in and we'll find a spot for you. And the other cool thing is a lot of people come in and they say, well, I want to run a game. This is kind of the game of my dreams. And then we help you put it together and we get it launched with you. So come on in, check it all out. It's a really cool and unique experience, as you've seen. I want to thank the Women's Wargaming Network and Jan for this game and for having me on as a commentator. I had a great time today, and I want to thank you all for watching. All right, that's all I've got to say. So with that, we will see you on our next adventure.